The Atlanta sun beat down on Ariel Thompson as she stared at the text message on her phone. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. "I'm sorry, Ari. It just happened. We never meant to hurt you." The man she'd planned to marry in just 3 weeks. The man who'd apparently been sleeping with her cousin Tasha for the past 6 months. At 27, she was beautiful, deep brown skin, high cheekbones, and eyes that her mother always said could see right through a person's lies. Except they hadn't seen through Marcus's. The bakery job offer she'd received last week had seemed like a sign. Her fresh start away from Atlanta, away from the memories of Marcus and Tasha, away from her mother's voice telling her to be the bigger person and keep the family together. The message was from Marcus, her fiancé of 2 years. Seattle wasn't just an opportunity, it was an escape. Her flight wasn't for another 2 hours, but she needed to be away from her apartment, away from anywhere Marcus might look for her. As she sat at the gate, she turned her phone back on. 23 missed calls, 10 from Marcus, 8 from her mother, 5 from Tasha. Family is family, Tasha is sorry. She stood up, grabbed her carry-on and marched straight toward him. She grabbed his face in her hands and kissed him hard on the lips. It wasn't a romantic kiss, it was a statement. When she pulled back, his eyes were wide with shock. "I'm done being the one who has to make everything okay." Ariel took a deep breath and looked at her reflection in the hallway mirror. "Enough," she whispered to herself. "I'm done." She grabbed her pre-packed suitcase from the closet. She'd been planning to visit Seattle next month to look at apartments. Now she was leaving tonight. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her mother. He took the coffee with slightly trembling hands and headed toward his gate. "Your coffee." The barista was holding out a cup to him. He settled into his first-class seat and closed his eyes, trying to make sense of what had happened. He'd been in Atlanta finalizing the sale of his company, and now he was heading home to Seattle with the lingering sensation of a stranger's kiss on his lips. He didn't know how, but he would find the woman who had mistaken him for someone else and given him the most intense moment of his life. He was Caleb Westmore, 29-year-old tech billionaire and owner of Westtech Solutions, a company he'd just sold for billions. And what she couldn't have known was that she had just given Caleb Westmore his very first kiss. He'd never experienced anything like that in his life. The owner, an older woman named Martha, had taken an immediate liking to her and her pastry skills. "I'm so glad you decided to come to Seattle." Growing up homeschooled by his religious mother and largely ignored by his father, Caleb had never learned how to talk to women. His social awkwardness had only gotten worse as he grew older and more successful. Now at 29, he'd built and sold a tech empire, but had never been on a date, never kissed a woman, until now. He was standing alone near the coffee shop, looking at his phone. From this distance, with his light brown skin and close-cut hair, he could be Derek. "Ariel, you need to talk to them." A tall man in a simple grey sweater and jeans walked in, his eyes scanning the cafe until they landed on her. There was something familiar about him, but she couldn't place it. 3 days away from Atlanta, and already the tight knot in her chest had begun to loosen. She hadn't answered any calls from her family or Marcus. She'd sent one text to her mother. "I'm safe. I need time." That was all. "I'm Caleb. It's nice to meet you, Ariel Thompson." But mostly watching Ariel when he thought she wasn't looking. There was something so intense about his gaze that it made her both uncomfortable and curious. There was something about him that had stirred something in her, something she wasn't ready to feel again so soon after Marcus. He took his coffee to a small table by the window and sat down, occasionally glancing in her direction. Caleb Westmore, anonymously. Ariel turned off her phone and called a cab. She'd already made her decision. "An anonymous investor wants to fund our expansion. We can finally renovate the kitchen and open that second location I've been dreaming about." At the airport, Ariel moved through security in a daze. When she handed him the cup, their fingers brushed, and something like electricity sparked between them. The fire in her eyes, the softness of her lips against his, the pain in her voice when she spoke. Who was she? Who had hurt her so badly? Caleb Westmore walked in wearing a different sweater but the same shy smile. And why did he feel such an overwhelming need to know more about her? The whole thing was a mess, and Ariel wanted no part of it anymore. Every day, he would sit at the same table by the window, sometimes for hours, occasionally typing on his laptop, she asked, a small smile playing on her lips, but mostly watching Ariel when he thought she wasn't looking. That's amazing. Do you have any idea who it could be? I'm sorry, I can order something else. A new text came through from Tasha. Derek's coming to stop you. Please just talk to him. No need to apologize. I was just curious why you keep ordering something you don't enjoy. And why do you want to come here? Derek was Tasha's boyfriend, the one she'd been cheating on with Marcus. She looked up, scanning the crowded terminal. That's when she saw him. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a navy coat. Something snapped inside Ariel. If Derek thought he could just show up and convince her to go back to forgive Tasha and Marcus, he was wrong. The man looked up just as she reached him. Before he could speak, Ariel did something she'd never done before. "Tell her I'm done forgiving them," Ariel said, her voice shaking with emotion. No one had ever been so straightforward with her before. It was refreshing and terrifying at the same time. Then she turned and walked away, leaving the man standing there, his mouth slightly open, his fingers touching his lips. What Ariel didn't know was that the man wasn't Derek. People wanted to know him for his money, not for himself. But Ariel was different. She didn't know who he was. She didn't know about Westech or the billions in his bank account. Caleb's breath caught in his throat. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. She just knew him as the quiet guy who ordered coffee he didn't drink. Caleb stood frozen in place, watching the beautiful woman disappear into the crowd. His heart was racing, his palms sweaty. As they walked across the street to the diner, he fought the urge to tell her everything. About the airport, about the kiss, about how he hadn't been able to stop thinking about her since that moment. But he knew it was too soon. He knew she might run if she found out the truth. "Sir?" "Oh, yes, thank you." Caleb's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. 6 o'clock. The diner. I'll be there. He'd closed his laptop hours ago, unable to concentrate on work. Since selling his company, he did occasionally consult remotely, and I like the atmosphere at Sweet Beginnings. This would be his first real date, ever. Growing up isolated with a mother who believed dating was a sin and a father who only cared about his academic achievements, Caleb had never learned how to connect with people, especially women. She'd just fled Atlanta to escape a broken heart, and here she was, agreeing to have dinner with a man she barely knew. That the kiss she didn't remember giving him at the Atlanta airport had changed his life forever, and that he was not just a shy customer who liked her company, he was the anonymous investor who had saved Martha's bakery. 3 days later, Ariel stood behind the counter at Sweet Beginnings, the small bakery cafe in downtown Seattle, where she'd secured a job as assistant manager. He didn't want to talk about his family's wealth or his own success. He wanted to know about her. "My family has a house on Mercer Island." "You're a natural, Ariel," Martha said, watching as Ariel decorated a tray of cupcakes. Ariel smiled. "Me too. It feels right being here." And it did. The bell above the door jingled and Ariel looked up. Her heart skipped a beat. "Welcome to Sweet Beginnings," she said with a professional smile. "What can I get for you today?" The man just stared at her for a moment, his eyes wide as if he couldn't believe she was real. Then he cleared his throat. "Coffee, please. Black." His voice was soft, almost shy. As Ariel turned to pour his coffee, she felt his eyes on her back. "Thank you," he said, still staring at her. "Ariel Thompson," she replied, not sure why she was giving her full name to a customer. Caleb nodded as if confirming something to himself. For the next 2 hours, Caleb sat at that table, barely touching his coffee, occasionally typing on his laptop. When he finally left, leaving a $20 tip for a $3 coffee, Ariel felt both relieved and disappointed. What Ariel didn't know was that as Caleb walked out of Sweet Beginnings, he was making a phone call to his financial advisor. "I want to invest in a bakery," he said. "Sweet Beginnings on Pike Street. Find out what they need and make it happen." The next morning, Martha greeted Ariel with tears in her eyes. "You won't believe it," she said, waving a letter. Ariel hugged the older woman, genuinely happy for her. Martha shook her head. "Not a clue." The letter just says they believe in what we're doing here. The bell above the door jingled, and both women looked up. "Good morning," he said, eyes finding Ariel immediately. "Could I get another coffee, black?" And so began a routine. Every day, Caleb would come to Sweet Beginnings. Every day, he would order a black coffee. After a week, Ariel finally approached his table. "You don't really like coffee, do you?" Caleb looked up, surprised. "What? You never drink it?" Caleb's face flushed. Ariel laughed, a sound that made Caleb's heart race. Caleb hesitated, then said, "It gives me a reason to come here." The honesty of his answer caught Ariel off guard. Caleb looked at her directly, his eyes intense. "Because you're here." Ariel felt a blush creep up her neck. "I don't even know you," she said, but she didn't walk away. "I'd like to change that," Caleb replied, "if you'd let me." Something about his quiet confidence, mixed with an underlying vulnerability, made it hard for Ariel to say no. She hesitated, then made a decision. "I get off at 6, she said. "There's a diner across the street." Caleb's face lit up with a smile that transformed him from merely handsome to breathtaking. As Ariel walked back to the counter, she couldn't help but wonder what she was doing. What she didn't know was that Caleb was harboring a secret, that he already knew her in a way she couldn't imagine. As 6 o'clock approached, Caleb grew increasingly nervous. His success in the tech world had only made things worse. At exactly 6, Ariel emerged from the back of the bakery, having changed from her work uniform into a simple blue dress. "Ready?" she asked, a hint of nervousness in her voice. Caleb nodded, not trusting himself to speak. At the diner, they settled into a booth, and Ariel studied him across the table. "So, Caleb Westmore, what's your story?" she asked. "Why do you spend your days sitting in a bakery watching a woman you don't know?" Caleb smiled shyly. "It's not as creepy as it sounds." "It sounds pretty creepy," Ariel teased, but her smile took the sting out of her words. "I work remotely," Caleb explained, which wasn't entirely a lie. "And what do you do? Remotely?" Caleb hesitated. "Tech consulting." Again, not entirely a lie, but not the whole truth either. Ariel seemed to accept this. "I grew up here," Caleb said. Ariel's eyebrows rose. "Mercer Island? That's fancy." Caleb shrugged, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "What about you?" A shadow crossed Ariel's face. Caleb wanted to ask more, but sensed her reluctance. "Whatever it was brought you here." They ordered food, burgers and fries, and as they ate, they talked about safer topics, favorite books, movies, places they'd traveled. Caleb was careful not to mention the many countries he'd visited on business, instead focusing on the few personal trips he'd taken. Ariel spoke of her love for baking, how it had been her escape since childhood. "My mama always said I had magic in my hands," she said with a small smile. "Whenever things got tough at home, I'd bake. It was the one thing that was just mine." "Things were tough at home?" Caleb asked gently. Ariel shrugged. "My daddy left when I was 12. After that, it was just me, my mama, and my cousin Tasha. We got by, but mama always leaned on me to be the strong one. Ariel will handle it, she'd say. He had expectations for me that didn't leave much room for anything else. And I always did." The way she said it made Caleb think there was much more to the story, but he didn't push. "What about your family?" Ariel asked. Caleb stared down at his plate. "My mother homeschooled me. She's very religious. My father was always working." "Like what?" "Success. Legacy. Continuing the Westmore name." Caleb's voice grew quieter, meaning someone from a similar background, someone who would fit into his world. "Finding the right kind of woman to marry." She looked away, taking a sip of her water. "The right kind?" Ariel's voice had an edge to it now. "Thank you for dinner. It was," Caleb asked, his heart in his throat. "Nice." He hadn't told her everything, but he'd been more honest with her than he'd been with anyone in a long time. And she wanted to see him again. That was enough for now. There was something about Caleb Westmore that drew her in, made her want to trust him. But after Marcus and Tasha, could she really trust her judgment again? And why did she have the nagging feeling that she'd met Caleb before? Someone real, someone who sees me, not what I can give them or what my name means. Caleb looked up quickly. His words, not mine. My father has very traditional views. Women who would bring the right connections, the right background, the right image to the Westmore name. He paid the bill despite her protests and walked her to the bus stop. Traditional meaning what exactly? Caleb hesitated. A woman who didn't know he was rich, who didn't care about his last name, who looked at him and actually saw him. Are you sure you're ready to trust another man? And what do you want? Ariel asked, her eyes studying him intently. Her father says she's interested in meeting you. I'm not saying I trust him. I'm just saying there's something about him, something real. And by the way, your mama's been calling me every day asking if I've heard from you. Dinner tomorrow at the club, 7 p.m. First, he would not go to dinner with the Wilson girl. She keeps saying she needs to explain, while helping me plan my wedding. And second, he would find a way to tell Ariel the truth about who he was and how they'd really met. He just needed to find the right moment, before someone else told her first. There was something so different about him compared to Marcus. Where Marcus had been all charm and swagger, Caleb was quiet and genuine. Where Marcus had talked about himself constantly, Caleb seemed more interested in listening. Don't be late. Caleb met her gaze directly. Not at the bakery, but somewhere else. Somewhere that seemed just out of reach in her memory. She could sense it in the way he carefully chose his words, in how he steered the conversation away from certain topics. What was he hiding? And did she have the courage to find out? For a moment she was back in Atlanta, feeling Marcus's eyes on her as she walked down the aisle at her dress fitting. But where Marcus's gaze had made her feel like an object to be admired, Caleb's made her feel seen. Really seen. The intensity of his answer seemed to surprise Ariel. I should probably head home, she said. Early shift tomorrow. Every morning he would arrive with a small gift for Ariel, sometimes flowers, sometimes a book he thought she might enjoy. There was something about Caleb's quiet attention that healed parts of her she hadn't realized were broken. Unlike Marcus, who had always made everything about himself, Caleb listened, really listened. And every evening, he would wait for her shift to end, and they would explore Seattle together. When did you first know you wanted to do it professionally? My mama was working 2 jobs, and Tasha was going through a rough patch. Mix the right ingredients in the right way, and something beautiful happens. It's reliable, predictable. I baked a batch of my grandmother's caramel cake to cheer everyone up. A neighbor tasted it and asked if I could make one for her daughter's birthday. My mother just wanted me to stay close to home, maybe teach at the private Christian school where she volunteered. She paid me $50. Ariel laughed. I thought I was rich. It was a simple game, nothing special, but it was mine. Something I created that had nothing to do with my father's legacy or my mother's faith. Caleb nodded, trying to hide his disappointment. Had he said something wrong? One afternoon, when Caleb had stepped out to take a phone call, Martha sidled up to Ariel at the counter. Just as he never pushed her about what had happened in Atlanta, she didn't push him about his past. I've always been good with computers, he said carefully. It was an escape, I guess, from my parents' expectations. He takes one bite of whatever you recommend, smiles like it's the best thing he's ever tasted, then never touches it again. And they certainly don't come to a bakery every day for 2 weeks straight, when they don't even like sweets. Ariel finally asked, How did you get into tech consulting? How do you know he doesn't like sweets? We're all hiding something, dear. As they stood outside, Ariel made a decision. She asked, Real coffee, not the kind you pretend to drink. The question is whether what he's showing you is real. It was true that Caleb always ordered something when he came in, but she'd never paid attention to whether he actually ate it. As they waited, Ariel turned to him. His face brightened when he saw her, and despite her doubts, Ariel felt her heart skip a beat. I left most of my things behind. It was a quick decision to move. She taught me to bake. She died when I was 18. Can I see you again? As the night grew later, Ariel found herself telling Caleb more about her life in Atlanta, her mother's expectations, her cousin Tasha's jealousy, her relationship with Marcus. She stopped short of explaining exactly why she'd left, but Caleb seemed to understand that something painful had happened. She was the strongest person I've ever known, raised 5 kids on her own after my grandfather died, never complained, just did what needed doing. She set the photo down. Yeah, exactly. Even when we were kids, if Tasha broke something, it was somehow my fault for not watching her closely enough. If Mama had a bad day at work, it was my job to cheer her up. I was always the fixer, the one who I try to be like her, but sometimes. Ariel hesitated, then nodded. I'd like that. When her bus came, Caleb watched her go, a mixture of hope and fear swirling in his chest. What Caleb didn't know was that as Ariel sat on the bus, heading to her small apartment, she was fighting her own battle. Back at his penthouse apartment overlooking Elliott Bay, Caleb stood at the window, watching the lights of the city. His phone buzzed with a text from his father. The Wilson girl is in town. Caleb sighed and put the phone down without responding. His father was still trying to set him up with suitable women from wealthy families. But all Caleb could think about was Ariel Thompson, with her bright eyes and genuine smile. A woman who had unknowingly given him his first kiss at an airport, and with it, his first taste of what it might feel like to be truly wanted. As he got ready for bed, Caleb made 2 decisions. Meanwhile, in her small studio apartment, Ariel was on the phone with her best friend from Atlanta, Janelle. He seems different, Ariel was saying. Quiet, but in a thoughtful way, not like he's hiding something. Girl, you just got your heart broken, Janelle replied. Ariel sighed. Just be careful, Janelle warned. What did you tell her? That you're a grown woman who needs space, but Ari, they're worried. Tasha's a mess. Ariel felt the familiar anger rise in her chest. There's nothing to explain. She slept with my fiancé for 6 months. I know, I'm just passing along the message. After hanging up, Ariel lay in bed, thinking about Caleb. But there was also something Caleb wasn't telling her. As she drifted off to sleep, Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that she'd seen Caleb somewhere before. The next morning, Caleb was waiting outside Sweet Beginnings when Ariel arrived to open the shop. He held a small bouquet of daisies. Good morning, he said, his shy smile making her heart flutter despite her reservations. Morning, she replied, taking the flowers with a smile. You didn't have to do this. I wanted to, Caleb said simply. As Ariel unlocked the door, she felt Caleb watching her with that intense gaze that seemed to see right through her. And that was both wonderful and terrifying. Because if Caleb could really see her, would he stay when he discovered all the broken pieces she was trying so hard to hide? 2 weeks passed, and Caleb became a fixture at Sweet Beginnings. Ariel found herself looking forward to these moments more than she wanted to admit. Tell me more about your baking, he said one evening as they walked along the waterfront. Ariel smiled at the memory. I was 16. You must have been good, Caleb said, his eyes warm as he looked at her. I was, Ariel said without false modesty. Baking made sense to me when nothing else did. Unlike people, Caleb added softly. Ariel glanced at him. Yeah, unlike people. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the sound of the water lapping against the shore filling the space between them. What about you? Caleb tensed slightly, as he always did when the conversation turned to his work. What did they expect? Caleb stared out at the water. My father wanted me to go into finance like him, take over the family business someday. But you chose tech instead. I built my first program when I was 12, Caleb said, a small smile playing on his lips. Ariel wanted to ask more, about what kind of program he'd built, about what his consulting work entailed now, but she sensed his reluctance. Back at Sweet Beginnings, Martha had noticed the growing closeness between Ariel and her shy customer. That young man has eyes only for you, she said with a knowing smile. Ariel busied herself with arranging a tray of cookies. We're just friends. Martha raised an eyebrow. Friends don't look at each other the way he looks at you. Ariel's head shot up. Martha laughed. Honey, I've been in this business for 30 years. I know when someone's faking it. Ariel frowned. He's hiding something, Ariel said, voicing the thought that had been nagging at her. Martha patted her hand. Before Ariel could respond, the bell above the door jingled and Caleb returned, slipping his phone into his pocket. Later that night, after a dinner at a small Italian restaurant, Caleb walked Ariel to her apartment building. Would you like to come up for coffee? Caleb's eyes widened slightly, and a faint blush colored his cheeks. I'd like that, he said. Ariel's apartment was small but cozy. She decorated it with colorful throw pillows and framed photos of landscapes, notably no pictures of family or friends from Atlanta. As she prepared the coffee, Caleb wandered around the living room, looking at her small collection of books and the few personal items she'd brought with her. You travel light, he observed. Ariel glanced around the apartment. Caleb nodded, not pressing for more information. He picked up a small framed photo of a younger Ariel with an older woman. Your mother? My grandmother, Ariel corrected, bringing 2 mugs of coffee to the small coffee table. You look like her, Caleb said, studying the photo. Same smile. Ariel took the photo from him gently. Sometimes it's hard to be strong all the time, Caleb finished for her. Ariel looked at him, surprised by how well he understood. They sat on the small sofa, drinking their coffee and talking. My mama always said I was the responsible one, Ariel explained. Made everything okay. That's a lot of pressure for a child, Caleb said softly. Ariel shrugged. It was what it was. But sometimes... She hesitated, then continued. Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to not be the strong one, to let someone else carry the weight for a while. Caleb reached out and took her hand. I don't usually get emotional like this. His touch was gentle, hesitant, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed this small intimacy. In the soft lamplight of her apartment, Caleb's face was open, vulnerable. It was a soft kiss, tentative and questioning. But when Caleb responded, there was an urgency to his touch that surprised her. His hands came up to frame her face, and he kissed her back with a passion that seemed at odds with his usual reserve. There was no guile there, no hidden agenda she could detect, just a man looking at her like she was something precious. You don't always have to be strong, Ariel. Not with me. The simple sincerity in his words brought unexpected tears to Ariel's eyes. She blinked them away quickly, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she said, wiping at her eyes. Caleb's eyes were wide, a mixture of wonder and something like fear in them. Ariel sat on the sofa, her mind racing. What was he going to tell her? That he was married, that he had a girlfriend, that he was leaving Seattle? Don't apologize, Caleb said, his voice warm. It's nice, seeing the real you. I have to go, he said. Family emergency. Ariel looked at him, really looked at him. No, it's better if I go alone. My parents are complicated. He touched his lips with his fingers as if trying to hold on to the sensation. It's just, I'm stable, but I need to go to the hospital. Before she could overthink it, Ariel leaned forward and kissed him. Of course. Go be with your family. Do you want me to come with you? What I was going to tell you. Can it wait? Until tomorrow? When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing heavily. I'm sorry, I have to take this. It's my father. But somehow Caleb had slipped past her defenses. But I need to know who he really is. Through the window, he could see his mother sitting beside the bed, her head bowed in prayer. His mother looked up, her face lighting with relief. She was a small woman, her once blonde hair now gray, her face lined with the strain of a lifetime spent trying to please an unpleasable man. Physical affection had never been common in the Westmore household. How is he? Thank God you're here. Richard Westmore, at 65, was still a formidable presence. It was indigestion, not a heart attack. These doctors are incompetent. His father, even in a hospital gown, managed to look imposing. He says he's a tech consultant here in Seattle. I'm sorry, Ariel said, misreading his expression. That was too forward. Something important. And after Marcus and Tasha, she wasn't sure her heart could take another betrayal. No, Caleb said quickly. No, it was perfect. Just what? Unnecessary. You need a suitable wife, someone who understands our world. I've met someone, he said. You've had your fun with your little computer games, but it's time to grow up. She works at a bakery. She's from Atlanta. Oh, Caleb, that's wonderful. Who is she? Do we know her family? I think I've proven I know what I'm doing. But since you're here, we might as well discuss business. The Wilson dinner. Caleb hesitated, then said, There's something I need to tell you about me, about us. You, one of the wealthiest men under 30 in this country, are dating a shop girl. Ariel felt a cold knot form in her stomach. This was it, the secret he'd been keeping. What is it? Before Caleb could answer, his phone rang. He glanced at it, then back at Ariel. I'm trying to protect our son from making a terrible mistake. Never. I want Ariel, and I'm going to tell her the truth tomorrow, all of it. Caleb, listen to me. End this dalliance now before it goes any further. The Wilson girl. He stepped into the hallway, closing the apartment door behind him. What I need is for my son to start taking his responsibilities seriously. If you do that, don't expect any support from me, financial or otherwise. He didn't know the answers to most of these questions. His father's words, harsh as they were, had planted seeds of doubt. Would Ariel still want him when she knew the truth? Would she think he'd been deliberately deceiving her? Or worse, would she only see his wealth like so many others had before? It's about the family, our legacy, everything I've built, everything my father built before me. The airport kiss had been impulsive, born of her pain and anger. Tonight's kiss had been different, tender, real. He's the Caleb Westmore, founder of West Tech Solutions. He just sold his company for like billions, Ari. But for the first time in my life, I'm doing something because it feels right, not because it fits into your plans for me. And hoped that what they had built over these 2 weeks was strong enough to withstand the truth. His mother was crying silently, and his father was staring at him with a mixture of anger and disappointment that was all too familiar. Ariel's voice trailed off as the pieces started to fall into place. His father is Richard Westmore, head of Westmore Investments. They basically built half the city. The expensive gifts that seemed out of place for a consultant, the home on Mercer Island, the way he avoided talking about his work. You're throwing it away for some girl you barely know. Of course you don't, because you're still that naive little boy who thinks the world is fair and people can be taken at face value. Maybe I was just some charity project. Poor Ariel, working in a bakery, doesn't even know she's serving coffee to a billionaire. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. Let me tell you something, son. And when she finds out, and she will find out, what do you think will happen? He had hidden his wealth, his status, his entire identity. She'll either run for the hills because you deceived her, or she'll see dollar signs and cling to you like a leech. Once again, she had trusted someone, and once again, she had been deceived. The only difference was that this time she had seen it coming and had chosen to ignore the warning signs. Can we meet? There's something important I need to tell you. You're Caleb Westmore, billionaire founder of West Tech. A woman like that, a nobody with no connections, no family name. She's only interested in one thing, your money. He and Ariel had talked about many things, but her education, her family's status, those details hadn't seemed important. The Wilson girl is exactly the kind of woman he should be considering. Every time the bell above the door jingled, she looked up, half expecting, half dreading to see Caleb walk in. But he didn't come. Her father's connections would be valuable for the next phase of Westmore Investments. When Caleb returned a few minutes later, his face was tense. Caleb's shyness, his reluctance to talk about his work, the way he never seemed to eat the food he ordered at the bakery, the expensive gifts, the fine restaurants, the casual mention of a family home on Mercer Island, and now a family emergency that she wasn't invited to be part of. Is everything okay? Ariel asked, concerned despite her suspicions. My father had a minor heart attack, Caleb explained. Of course, Ariel said, standing up. Caleb shook his head quickly. Ariel nodded, trying to hide her hurt. I understand. Caleb reached for her hand. Ariel forced a smile. Caleb kissed her quickly, then left, the door closing behind him with a soft click. Alone in her apartment, Ariel couldn't shake the feeling that Caleb was still hiding something from her. She picked up her phone, and before she could change her mind, called Janelle. "I need you to do something for me," she said when her friend answered. "Can you look up someone named Caleb Westmore?" "Caleb Westmore?" Janelle repeated. "Why does that name sound familiar?" "I don't know," Ariel said. After hanging up, Ariel paced her small apartment, replaying the last 2 weeks in her mind. She'd been so careful with her heart, so determined not to make the same mistakes she'd made with Marcus, and now she was terrified of what she might discover. At the hospital, Caleb stood outside his father's private room, gathering his courage. Taking a deep breath, Caleb entered the room. "Caleb," she said, rising to embrace him. "Hello, Mother," Caleb said, returning her hug awkwardly. "Stubborn as ever," his father's voice boomed from the bed. "The doctors said it was a mild cardiac event," his mother corrected gently. "They want to keep him overnight for observation." Caleb approached the bed. "I came as soon as I heard." His father waved a dismissive hand. "Richard, not now," his mother interrupted. "You need to rest." Richard Westmore fixed his wife with a cold stare. "I'm not interested in the Wilson girl," Caleb said, his voice quiet but firm. "I've told you that." His father's face darkened. "This isn't about what you want. It's about what's best for the family, for the business." "My little computer games just sold for billions," Caleb replied, an edge creeping into his voice. "Money isn't everything," his father said dismissively. "The Westmore name means something in this city. It stands for tradition, for values." Caleb thought of Ariel, her warm eyes, her genuine smile, the way she looked at him like he was just a man, not a billionaire or a Westmore. His mother's eyes widened. "Her name is Ariel Thompson." The silence that followed was deafening. His father's face grew red, a vein pulsing in his temple. "A bakery," Richard Westmore repeated, his voice dangerously quiet. "She's not a shop girl," Caleb said, anger rising in his chest. "She's talented and kind and completely unsuitable," his father interrupted. "What's her background? What schools did she attend? What does her family do?" Caleb hesitated. "I don't know," he admitted, "and I don't care." His father laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "She doesn't know about my money," Caleb said through gritted teeth. "She doesn't know who I really am." His father's eyebrows shot up. "You're lying to her. Even better." "Richard," his mother said, placing a hand on her husband's arm, "your blood pressure." Richard shook her off. "I don't want the Wilson girl." Caleb's voice rose, startling both his parents. He never raised his voice, his father's face hardened. Caleb laughed bitterly. "I don't need your money, Father. I have plenty of my own." "It's not about the money," Richard said, his voice suddenly tired. "Maybe I am," Caleb replied, turning to leave. At the door, he paused and looked back. "I hope you feel better," Caleb said stiffly. "I'll check in tomorrow." As he drove back to his penthouse, Caleb's mind was racing. He thought about the kiss they'd shared earlier that evening, not their first kiss, though Ariel didn't know that. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would tell her everything. The next morning, Ariel woke to a text from Janelle. "Call me ASAP, you need to see this." With a feeling of dread, Ariel called her friend. "Girl, do you know who you're dating?" Janelle said without preamble. "Caleb Westmore isn't just some tech consultant." Ariel's hand tightened around her phone. "That can't be right. I'm looking at his picture right now on Forbes' 30 under 30 list. It's definitely him. How did you not know this?" "He never said—" "There's more," Janelle said. "His family is old money, like Seattle royalty." Ariel sat down heavily on her bed. "He lied to me." "Did he actually say he wasn't rich? Or did he just not mention it?" Ariel thought back to their conversations. Caleb had never explicitly claimed to be an ordinary tech consultant, but he had certainly allowed her to believe it. "Why would he do that?" she wondered aloud. "Maybe he wanted you to like him for him, not his money," Janelle suggested. "Or maybe he didn't think I was good enough to know the truth," Ariel said, her voice hardening. The hurt was giving way to anger now. "Ari, I don't think—" "I have to go," Ariel interrupted. "I have to get to work." She hung up and stared at her phone, waiting for it to ring, waiting for Caleb to call and explain himself, but the phone remained silent. At Sweet Beginnings, Ariel moved through her shift in a daze. By closing time, Ariel's hurt had hardened into a cold, familiar anger. As she was locking up, her phone finally rang. It was Caleb. "Ariel," he said when she answered, his voice tight with what sounded like nervousness. "Let me guess," Ariel said, her voice flat. "You're not really a tech consultant. Solutions." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, "You know." "I know," Ariel confirmed. "What I don't know is why you lied to me." "I didn't lie," Caleb said quickly. "I just didn't tell you everything. Please, can we meet?" "I don't think that's a good idea. I've had enough of men keeping secrets from me. I can explain." Ariel closed her eyes, fighting back tears. "Ariel, please. It's not what you think." "It never is," she said bitterly. "Goodbye, Caleb." She hung up before he could respond and leaned against the bakery door, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. She had come to Seattle to escape betrayal, only to walk right into another one. Her phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "There's more you need to know. Please let me explain." But the caller ID showed it was her mother. She deleted it without responding and began walking toward the bus stop. She didn't want to hear his excuses, his justifications. 3 weeks with barely a word. "I had to hear from Janelle that you're alive and working in some bakery in Seattle." She'd heard enough of those from Marcus to last a lifetime. As she waited for the bus, her phone rang again. Expecting Caleb, she almost didn't answer. "She slept with my fiancé." What more is there to say? "She has something important to tell you. Something you need to hear." Sighing, Ariel answered, "Hello, Mama. Tasha said she'd come find you at work tomorrow if you don't call her." "Fine, I'll call her. But I'm not promising anything." "Ariel Marie Thompson, do you have any idea how worried we've been?" Her mother's voice was sharp with concern and irritation. "I'm fine, Mama," Ariel said tiredly. "I just needed some space." Caleb's deception, Tasha's arrival, her mother's expectations, it was all too much. "Space is a weekend at a spa, not running across the country without telling anyone where you're going," her mother replied. "Me and Derek. We need to talk to you, Ari. It's important. Tasha's been crying for weeks. She wants to talk to you to explain." Part of her wanted to call Caleb to hear his explanation. Another part, the part that had been hurt too many times, warned her to stay away. "There's nothing to explain," Ariel said, the familiar anger rising again. "Then if you still hate me, I'll leave you alone, I promise." People make mistakes, Ariel, even big ones, but family is family. "Is that why you're calling, Mama? To convince me to forgive Tasha?" "If you still want nothing to do with me afterward, I'll respect that. Just give me one chance." Missed his quiet presence, his shy smile, the way he looked at her like she was something precious. Her mother sighed. "I'm calling because I miss my daughter, and because Tasha and Derek are in Seattle." Ariel's blood ran cold. "What?" She just wasn't sure if it would be for better or worse. "They flew out this morning. Tasha said she needs to talk to you face to face. He had to make her understand why he hadn't told her who he really was, why he had kept the truth about their first meeting a secret." "I don't want to see her," Ariel said firmly, "or Derek. About the airport, about the kiss, about the investment in the bakery, and then it's up to her." Fine, tomorrow morning. With Ariel, for the first time, he had been just Caleb. Awkward, shy, unsure of himself, but real. And she had seen him, the real him, not the billionaire or the Westmore heir. There's a coffee shop across from Sweet Beginnings, 9 o'clock. And after everything she'd been through with her ex-fiancé, the last thing she needed was another man keeping secrets from her. Well, they're already there, staying at the Fairmont downtown. Her family is nobody. Mother works as a receptionist, father abandoned them years ago. No college degree, just a certificate from a community college culinary program. And now she's latched onto you, one of the wealthiest bachelors in the country. Ariel closed her eyes, feeling trapped. Be careful. Or at least she didn't until today. The last thing she wanted was to see her cousin and Derek, to relive the betrayal that had sent her fleeing from Atlanta in the first place. And even if she did, it wouldn't matter. I care about her, Father, and I think she cares about me. Makes me wonder if she knew all along. Ariel trying to prepare herself for confrontations with both Caleb and Tasha. Caleb rehearsing the words that might win back Ariel's trust, and Tasha in her hotel room holding a piece of information that could change everything. Then, noticing her expression, "What's wrong, honey?" She arrived at Sweet Beginnings an hour early, needing the comfort of the familiar space to prepare for what was coming. Martha was already there, preparing dough for the day's bread. After hanging up with her mother, Ariel boarded the bus, her mind swirling with too many emotions to process. And he's not who I thought he was. Ah, you found out who Caleb Westmore really is. Had everything, her surprise at his gifts, her genuine interest in him as a person, even the kiss they'd shared, been an act? Did you know she was engaged until a few weeks ago? And when a shy billionaire starts spending his mornings in my little bakery, staring at my new assistant manager, like she hung the moon, I notice. Left her fiancé at the altar and ran away to Seattle. And I figured he had his reasons for keeping quiet. Rich folks often do. He looked terrible, like he hadn't slept all night. His usually neat hair was slightly disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Despite everything, Ariel felt a pang of concern. Ariel asked, hurt that Martha had kept this from her. Back in her apartment, Ariel paced the small space, trying to decide what to do. She sat down, back straight, hands folded in front of her. That wasn't the reaction of someone who had known the truth all along. Even Martha, who she'd thought was on her side, had kept Caleb's secret. To explain himself. And then my cousin and her boyfriend are meeting me at 9. She laughed bitterly. It's going to be quite a morning. Caleb hesitated, then continued. Because people treat me differently when they know. They want something from me, my money, my connections, my name. I just didn't mention that I founded and sold a multi-billion-dollar company. For once, I wanted someone to see just me, not the Westmore heir or the tech billionaire. A lie of omission is still a lie, Caleb. Something more important. She felt anything but strong as the minutes ticked closer to 8 o'clock. At 5 minutes to, she stationed herself behind the counter, determined to maintain some physical barrier between herself and Caleb when he arrived. Finally, she decided to call Tasha. Better to deal with one crisis at a time. You kissed me. But why didn't you say something when you saw me here? Ari, Tasha's voice was hesitant when she answered. Is that really you? It's me, Ariel confirmed, keeping her voice neutral. Mama said you're in Seattle. The words she'd spoken in anger. Tell her I'm done forgiving them. Ariel's voice was rising with each word. That's quite a coincidence. We are. It wasn't entirely coincidental. I have nothing to say to either of you. But you didn't recognize me, and you were so alive, so real. I'd never felt anything like that before. When I got back to Seattle, I hired someone to find. I was afraid you'd think I was some kind of stalker. Please, Tasha begged, just meet us for coffee tomorrow. There's something you need to know about Marcus, about what really happened. Ariel laughed bitterly. I know what happened, Tasha. You slept with my fiancé. It wasn't like that, Tasha insisted. Please, just meet us. Hear us out. Ariel sighed, too tired to argue. Thank you, Tasha said, relief evident in her voice. You won't regret it. But as Ariel hung up, she was already regretting it. No, nothing like that. It was coincidence, I swear. I live in Seattle. I was in Atlanta on business. Her phone buzzed with another text from Caleb. I'll be at Sweet Beginnings tomorrow morning at 8. Please let me explain everything. Ariel stared at the message for a long time. Despite everything, despite the anger and hurt, she couldn't deny that she missed him. Finally, she typed a reply. 8 a.m. You get 5 minutes. His response came immediately. Thank you. I'll be there. As Ariel got ready for bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would change everything. Again. Meanwhile, across town in his penthouse, Caleb was pacing nervously, rehearsing what he would say to Ariel. He'd spent his entire life being judged by his name, his wealth, his family's status. But he had also deceived her, however, unintentionally. "I'll tell her everything," he decided aloud. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. It was his father. "Caleb," Richard Westmore's voice was unusually subdued. "We need to talk." "If this is about the Wilson girl—" "It's about your baker," his father interrupted. "I had her investigated." Caleb's blood ran cold. "You what?" "I needed to know who this woman is that has my son so captivated," Richard said, unapologetic. "And I found some interesting things." "That's not what happened," Caleb said, though he realized he didn't actually know the full story of why Ariel had left Atlanta. "No? Well, there's more." "She doesn't know who I am," Caleb said through gritted teeth. "Convenient timing," his father remarked. "Just as you're about to tell her everything, she suddenly discovers the truth on her own." "She didn't," Caleb said firmly. Richard Westmore sighed heavily. "Son, I'm trying to protect you. Women like that, they see men like us as meal tickets, as ways out of their ordinary lives." After hanging up, Caleb sat on his sofa, his father's words echoing in his mind. Could Ariel have known who he was all along? No, he decided. He'd seen the hurt in her eyes when she'd realized he'd kept his identity from her. Tomorrow, he would tell her everything, and hope that what they had built was real enough to survive the truth. As the night deepened, 3 people in Seattle lay awake, each wrestling with their own fears and hopes. By morning, none of them were ready for what was to come. The morning dawned gray and rainy, fitting Ariel's mood perfectly. "You're early," Martha remarked, looking up as Ariel entered. Ariel hung up her coat, trying to smile. "Just a lot going on." Martha wiped her hands on her apron and studied Ariel's face. "That handsome young man of yours?" "He's not mine," Ariel said more sharply than she intended. Martha nodded knowingly. Ariel stared at Martha in shock. "You knew?" Martha laughed. "Honey, everyone in Seattle knows who the Westmores are. That family has been a part of this city for generations. Why didn't you say anything?" "It wasn't my secret to tell," Martha replied simply. Ariel busied herself with setting up the coffee station, trying to process this new information. "He's coming by at 8, Ariel said finally. Martha squeezed Ariel's shoulder. "Whatever happens, you'll handle it. You're stronger than you think." Ariel wasn't so sure about that. At exactly 8, the bell above the door jingled and Caleb walked in. "Hi," he said, his voice uncertain. "Thank you for agreeing to see me." Ariel nodded stiffly. 5 minutes, like I promised." Caleb glanced around the empty bakery, then back at Ariel. "Can we sit down? Please?" Reluctantly, Ariel came out from behind the counter and led him to a table in the corner, far from where Martha was working. "I'm listening," she said. Caleb took a deep breath. "First, I want to apologize for not telling you who I really am. I should have been honest from the beginning." "Why weren't you?" Ariel asked, her voice cool. "Because—" "So you lied." "I didn't lie," Caleb insisted. "I am a tech consultant." Ariel shook her head. He looked down at his hands. "You're right. I'm sorry. But there's something else you need to know." "What?" Caleb met her eyes, his gaze intense. "We've met before the bakery." Ariel frowned. "What are you talking about?" "At the Atlanta airport, 3 weeks ago. You were leaving. You thought I was someone else. You—" He swallowed hard. Ariel's eyes widened as the memory suddenly clicked into place. The tall man in the navy coat, the impulsive kiss. "That was you?" she whispered, mortified. "I tried to that first day," Caleb explained. "Wait." Ariel's mind was racing now. "How did you find me? Did you follow me from Atlanta?" "No. But of all the bakeries in Seattle, you just happened to walk into the one where I work." Caleb looked away, guilt written across his face. "What does that mean?" He sighed. "After you kissed me, I couldn't stop thinking about you. Out who you were. You had me investigated?" Ariel stood up, outraged, like I was some kind of criminal. "It wasn't like that. I just wanted to know your name, to see if you were okay. You seemed so hurt at the airport." "No." Caleb reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I just wanted to see you again. And then, when I did, when we started talking, I felt this connection. Something real. I didn't want to ruin it by telling you how we'd actually met. And then what? You decided to become a regular at the bakery where I work to pretend we were meeting for the first time? I didn't plan any of it, Caleb insisted. Him showing up at Sweet Beginnings day after day, never mentioning their previous encounter. Ariel shook her head, trying to process everything. The kiss at the airport. Caleb tracking her down. Buy your way into my life. Make me dependent on you without even knowing it. Everything about us has been built on lies. There's one more thing, Caleb said, his voice almost a whisper now. The investment in the bakery. The anonymous donor. Despite everything, despite the lies and the secrets, there was something about Caleb that still called to her. Ariel looked up to see two people entering the bakery. A slender woman with a face so similar to her own, it was like looking in a slightly distorted mirror, and a tall man with light brown skin and close-cut hair wearing a navy coat. Something that felt more real than anything she'd experienced with Marcus. Ariel stared at him, the pieces falling into place. That was you. I don't need your money or your secrets or your stalking. At the coffee shop across the street, more real than anything I've ever felt. Tasha's voice trailed off as her eyes moved to Caleb. Her expression changed from nervousness to confusion. Wait, I'm confused. You two know each other. Until I found out he's been lying to me since the day we met. I came to Seattle to get away from people who lied to me, who betrayed my trust. Not the way you make me feel, like I'm more than my name or my money. Though seeing might be the wrong word, since apparently I haven't really been seeing him at all, just the version of himself he wanted to show me. Like I'm just a man who's falling in love with an incredible woman. I was supposed to stop Ariel from leaving Atlanta, but I was late getting to the terminal. By the time I got there, she was already walking away from you. Ariel listed, her voice rising with each item. About pretty much everything. And you must be Tasha, Ariel's cousin. You're Caleb Westmore? To forgive Tasha for sleeping with my fiancé? To forgive Marcus for betraying me? The tech guy. Ari, that's what we need to tell you. It wasn't what you think. Marcus and I never meant to hurt you. What else could that mean? Now what are you doing here? And somehow I walked right into another lie. I wanted to do something nice for both of you. She thinks the club is just my dream, something I'm working on for us. She has no idea how much money we'll be making once it's operational. By the time we're married, it'll be too late for her to back out. Caleb nodded. I saw how much you loved working here, how much Martha needed the help. Trust me, once we're married, once she's got my ring on her finger permanently, she'll be grateful. Who wouldn't want to be married to a successful businessman? I started recording when I realized what he was proposing. Ariel pressed play, and Marcus's voice filled the quiet bakery. Without telling either of us? Ariel's voice was cold now. You thought you could just... What? But Marcus threatened us. He said if we told you, he'd make sure Derek lost his job at the bank. He knew people who could make it happen. Once we're up and running, I'll make you both silent partners. 20% each. He started saying we'd betrayed him, that we'd ruined everything. He threatened to sue Derek for recording him without consent. He even tried to turn your mother against us, telling her we'd driven you away with lies. No, it wasn't like that, Caleb pleaded. I just wanted to help. I'm the only one working in the family right now. And Marcus let you think that. He even encouraged it. Told everyone you'd left because you found out about me and him, made himself the victim of your jealousy and insecurity. That wasn't about you and Marcus sleeping together, but he had been planning to use her, to marry her while keeping her in the dark about his business dealings, to take advantage of her trust and love. Marcus wanted us to contribute money, a lot of money, toward the club. Ariel asked Tasha, but his motives seemed different. He hadn't been trying to use her. He'd been trying to connect with her, to know her as a person, not as an heiress or a potential business contact. Everything I thought I knew, it's all upside down. Why let me believe the worst for weeks? Ariel asked, feeling lost. But I will say this, in my experience, it's not the mistakes people make that define them. It's how they try to make things right afterward. About Tasha, about Caleb, his face was a mixture of emotions. Relief that Ariel hadn't been betrayed in the way she thought, confusion about what all this meant for them. They looked up as she approached, but he had lied to her, had planned to use her, had seen her as naive and easy to manipulate, no more secrets, no more half-truths. And Caleb had been honest with her when confronted, had apologized, had laid everything bare. I thought we could handle Marcus ourselves, convince him to be straight with you. I was wrong. In some ways, that betrayal was worse than the one she'd believed in. And something else, something that looked almost like hope. Money we didn't have. When we refused, he got angry. Your mama said you needed space, that we should wait. But then Marcus started spreading more lies, saying you'd run off with another man, that you'd been cheating on him all along. I couldn't let him destroy your reputation like that. You recorded that conversation. Why keep it secret? I thought you might not believe me, might think I was jealous or trying to cause trouble, because in that moment when you kissed me, I felt something I'd never felt before. A connection, a spark. It sounds crazy, I know, but I've spent my whole life surrounded by people who only see what I can do for them. And then there you were, not knowing anything about me, showing more real emotion in 10 seconds than most people I know show in a lifetime. Marcus was always so charming, so good at making people see things his way. Why did you really come looking for me after the airport? The truth. So we came to find you. Said if we didn't help him, he'd find another way. That's when we realized he was never planning to make us partners. He just wanted our connections, our help securing the financing. I don't need your help, Ariel said, standing up. Closing the door, she leaned against it, trying to process everything. It's how they met. Caleb stood too, his face anguished. Ariel, please. What I feel for you is real. How would I know? Ariel asked, tears threatening to spill. Ariel? It was Martha. Are you okay, honey? Not everything, Caleb said softly. Not the way I feel about you. Always going on about how money doesn't matter, how we should focus on building a simple life together. She doesn't understand how the real world works. Her family's been struggling for money her whole life. I'm doing her a favor, setting us up for success. The word love hung in the air between them. Ariel felt her resolve wavering. Before she could respond, the bell above the door jingled again. Tasha, Ariel said, her voice flat. You're early. Tasha approached hesitantly, her eyes red-rimmed as if she'd been crying. Ari, we need to talk. We said 9 o'clock, Ariel replied coldly. I know, but we saw you through the window and… Caleb Westmore, he supplied, extending his hand politely. Tasha shook his hand automatically, her eyes wide. He's the man I've been seeing, Ariel explained, her voice tight. Derek stepped forward, his eyes moving between Caleb and Ariel. We're friends, Caleb said carefully, glancing at Ariel. We were more than friends, Ariel corrected, the past tense deliberate and cutting. Tasha frowned. Lying about what? About who he is, about how we met, about investing in this bakery without telling me. Wait, Derek said, looking at Caleb more closely now. You're the guy from the airport, the one Ariel kissed. Caleb's eyebrows shot up. You know about that? I was there, Derek explained. I saw the whole thing. Ariel looked between Derek and Caleb, confusion replacing anger for a moment. You were there. You were actually coming to stop me. Derek nodded. Tasha sent me. She was desperate to talk to you before you left, but she couldn't get through security without a ticket. And now you're both here, Ariel said, the anger returning. To what? Convince me to come back to Atlanta? Tasha stepped closer, her eyes pleading. Don't, Ariel cut her off. Don't lie to me. I saw the texts, Tasha. It just happened. It wasn't about us sleeping together, Tasha insisted. It was about the business deal. Ariel stared at her cousin. What business deal? Tasha and Derek exchanged a look. Then Derek pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and handed it to Ariel. Listen to this. It was a voice recording. Look, it's a simple deal. You and Tasha helped me secure the financing for the club. Another voice, Derek's, responded. And Ariel, does she know about this? Ariel doesn't need to know, Marcus replied. I don't know, man, Derek said. Lying to your fiancé about business deals, That seems shady. Marcus laughed, a sound that made Ariel's skin crawl. Ariel's sweet, but she's naive. And if she finds out? Tasha's voice now. She won't, Marcus said confidently. Not until it's too late. The recording ended, and Ariel handed the phone back to Derek, her hands shaking. When was this? 2 months ago, Derek said. At that business dinner Marcus invited us to. Why didn't you tell me? Ariel asked, looking at Tasha. I wanted to, Tasha said, tears streaming down her face now. Derek works at Marcus's uncle's bank, Ariel explained to Caleb, who was watching the scene unfold with a mixture of confusion and concern. I couldn't risk it, Derek said. My mother's medical bills. So what changed? Ariel asked. Why tell me now? Because of what happened next, Tasha said. After you found those texts and left, Marcus went crazy. The texts, Ariel said, remembering. It just happened. We never meant to hurt you. Tasha shook her head. It was about the business deal. And the money, Derek added. Don't forget the money. So when I found those texts, Ariel began. You thought they were about us having an affair, Tasha finished. Ariel felt dizzy with all these revelations. Marcus hadn't been sleeping with Tasha. There had been no affair. Why didn't you call me? I tried, Tasha said. We both did. But you blocked our numbers, changed yours. Ariel looked at Caleb, who had been silent throughout this exchange. I need a minute, Ariel said, standing up. This is a lot. She walked to the back of the bakery, into the small office Martha used for paperwork. Marcus hadn't cheated on her with Tasha, and Caleb. Caleb had also kept things from her, had tracked her down after their encounter at the airport, had invested in the bakery without telling her. There was a soft knock on the door. Ariel opened the door, allowing the older woman to enter. I don't know, Martha patted her hand. That's life sometimes. Just when you think you've got it figured out, it shows you something new. What should I do? Only you can answer that, Martha replied. Ariel thought about that. Tasha and Derek had come all the way to Seattle to tell her the truth, risking Marcus's anger and potential retaliation. I need to talk to them, she decided. All of them. When she returned to the front of the bakery, she found Caleb, Tasha, and Derek sitting awkwardly at a table. I have questions, Ariel said, taking a seat. For all of you. And I want honest answers. They all nodded in agreement. Tasha, why didn't you just tell me what Marcus was planning from the beginning? Before I found those texts? Tasha looked down, ashamed. I was scared. Not just for Derek's job, but for us, for our relationship. And you, Derek? Derek sighed. I recorded it as insurance, in case Marcus tried to screw us over on the deal. I never intended to show it to you. Ariel nodded, accepting their answers. Then she turned to Caleb. Caleb met her gaze steadily. So you tracked me down. I had to know who you were, Caleb admitted. And then when I found you here, working at Sweet Beginnings, looking so at peace, I couldn't bring myself to disrupt that peace by telling you who I was or how we'd met. With you, I wasn't Caleb Westmore, billionaire tech genius or whatever the press calls me. The Caleb she'd come to know over these past weeks, shy, thoughtful, genuinely interested in her as a person, that was the real Caleb, not the public persona of the tech billionaire. What do you want from me now, Tasha, Derek? I was just Caleb, a guy trying, probably badly, to connect with a woman who fascinated him. I want my cousin back. I want us to be family again. I miss you, Ari. I just wanted to get to know you, the real you. And you? A chance to see if what I feel for you, what I hope you might feel for me, is strong enough to overcome my mistakes. What do you want? By pretending to be someone you're not, Ariel pointed out. By being more myself than I've ever been allowed to be, Caleb corrected gently. Ariel considered his words. There was truth in them. She could feel it. One last question, she said, looking between the three of them. But I need you to know one thing that's absolutely true. That kiss at the airport, it was my first. To think about everything, to figure out what I want. Tasha reached across the table, not quite touching Ariel, but close. That she had unknowingly given him this first experience was both bewildering and strangely moving. Between my mother's religious strictness, my father's expectations, and my own social difficulties, it just never happened. Until you. And I want you to know the truth about Marcus, Derek added. Tasha, her cousin, practically her sister, who had kept secrets but had ultimately come to set things right. Derek, who had been caught in the middle but had tried to protect both the women in his life. Martha came out from the back, wiping her hands on her apron. I just wanted you to know that however confused our beginning was, whatever mistakes I've made since, my feelings for you are real. More real than anything I've ever felt. And Caleb, who had lied by omission but had shown her a version of himself that was perhaps more authentic than the one the rest of the world saw. So you can move on without those lies hanging over you. Ariel nodded, then turned to Caleb, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the morning's revelations, weighing her options. But Martha was right about one thing. She was still herself, and somehow she would figure out what to do next. Should she forgive Tasha and Derek, rebuild that relationship? Should she give Caleb a second chance, knowing now who he really was? Or should she walk away from all of them, continue on the path of independence she'd started when she left Atlanta? Everything I thought I knew, it's all different now. It was from her mother. Tasha says she told you everything. I'm sorry, baby, I should have been more honest with you too. Admitting she should have been more honest? It was so out of character that Ariel found herself dialing before she could think better of it. Marcus came around after you left, trying to get us to tell him where you went. After he left, I was so lost, so broken. I needed you to be strong because I couldn't be. I didn't like the look in his eyes. Call me when you can. Caleb's voice was soft but clear. A chance to start over, with complete honesty between us. And I don't need taking care of. The trick is finding someone who sees your strength as something to admire, not something to use. Ariel looked at each of them in turn. Someone who sees your strength as something to admire, not something to use. Ever. The thought still bewildered her. How could someone like Caleb, handsome and wealthy, have never been kissed? But then she remembered his shyness, his awkwardness in social situations, the way he sometimes struggled to maintain eye contact. Maybe it wasn't so surprising after all. Wasn't that exactly what Caleb had done? Admired her independence, her talent, her determination, never trying to change her or use her, just wanting to be near her. I need time, she said finally. I was wrong to put that burden on you. Wrong to expect you to always be the one who fixed everything. Still the girl who had shared her bedroom for years, who had cried with her when her father left, who had celebrated every small victory and mourned every defeat by her side. But for the first time since leaving Atlanta, she felt like she was moving towards something, not just running away. She would talk to Tasha and Derek tomorrow, work on rebuilding that relationship. 6 p.m. By the Ferris wheel. We need to talk. Richard Westmore's voice was gruff. Has she come to her senses and left town yet? Family was family, after all. And as for Caleb, the way he listened, really listened when she spoke, the shy smile that transformed his face, the gentleness of his kiss. How much money she can get out of you. Caleb, you're being naive. Women like that. You deserve to be taken care of sometimes too. And from what Tasha tells me, this new man of yours, he wants to do that, to take care of you. No, father. Then, surprisingly, a chuckle. Well, well, it seems my shy, awkward son has finally found his backbone, and all it took was a baker from Atlanta. Somewhere out there, Ariel was considering whether to give him a second chance, whether what they had, or could have, was worth the risk of pain, of disappointment. Ariel spent the morning with Tasha and Derek, hearing the full story of Marcus's scheme, of how he'd tried to use them all for his own gain. By the time they parted, with promises to stay in better touch, Ariel felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. The betrayal she'd felt, while real, had been based on a misunderstanding. Marcus was still a liar, still someone who had planned to use her, but at least Tasha hadn't been part of his deception. Ariel is kind and talented and strong in ways you can't imagine. I've been thinking about everything, about Marcus, about Tasha, about you. About all the secrets and lies. And if she gives me a second chance, I'm going to do everything in my power to deserve it. When I found out who you really were, what you'd kept from me, I was hurt. She was going to tell him to leave her alone, angry. I felt like history was repeating itself, like I was being made a fool of again. She's agreed to meet me tomorrow. One moment he was convinced Ariel would give him another chance. The next, he was certain she'd tell him to leave her alone forever. He changed his clothes 3 times before heading to the waterfront, wanting to look good but not like he was trying too hard. To talk. The evening was clear, the water of Elliott Bay reflecting the golden light of the setting sun. He spotted Ariel immediately, standing at the railing looking out at the water. For a long moment they just looked at each other, neither speaking. She was wearing a simple blue dress, the same one she'd worn on their first date at the diner, and her hair was loose around her shoulders. And what about his world, the wealth, the privilege, the expectations that came with the Westmore name? Could she ever fit into that life? But as she mixed dough for cookies she didn't really want, her thoughts kept returning to Caleb. Really? You want to meet her? If this woman is really as special as you seem to think, bring her to dinner. Let your mother and me meet her. To build a new life away from betrayal and pain. And then I met you. That alone makes her interesting. To hear her confess weakness, vulnerability, was like seeing a completely different person. They all nodded, understanding. Using my baby like that, planning to marry you under false pretenses. If your daddy was here, you're still you, strong, capable, with a good heart. That hasn't changed. We'll be at the Fairmont until Sunday, Tasha said, whenever you're ready to talk more. And I'll be... Caleb hesitated. Well, you know how to reach me. If you want to. As they all stood to leave, Caleb hung back, waiting until Tasha and Derek had exited the bakery. Ariel, he said, his voice quiet, I know I've made mistakes, kept things from you I shouldn't have. Ariel stared at him. Your first kiss? Ever? But you're 29, yes, Caleb said, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. The vulnerability in his admission touched something in Ariel. The idea that this handsome, successful man had never been kissed before her. I don't know what to say, she admitted. You don't have to say anything, Caleb replied. With that, he turned and left, the bell above the door jingling softly behind him. Alone in the bakery, Ariel sat down heavily, her mind swimming with all that had happened. Well, she said, surveying Ariel's shell-shocked expression, that was quite a morning. Ariel laughed weakly. You could say that. Martha sat down across from her. So what now? I don't know, Ariel admitted. Not everything, Martha said wisely. Ariel wasn't so sure about the strong part. She felt anything but strong at the moment. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Ariel went through the motions of her job, serving customers, baking pastries, cleaning counters. By closing time, she was no closer to a decision. As she locked up the bakery, her phone buzzed with a text. The text was unexpected. Her mother apologizing? Ariel. Her mother's voice was thick with emotion. Is that really you? It's me, Mama, Ariel confirmed, suddenly fighting back tears. Tasha told me everything. That man, her mother said, and Ariel could hear the anger in her voice. Daddy's not here, Ariel reminded her gently. Hasn't been for a long time. Her mother sighed. I know, and maybe that's part of why I pushed you so hard to be the strong one. The admission stunned Ariel. Her mother had always seemed so capable, so in control. Mama, No, let me finish, her mother interrupted. Caleb's not my man, Ariel said automatically. Her mother laughed, a warm sound that reminded Ariel of simpler times. Everyone needs taking care of sometimes, baby. Even strong people like you. After hanging up, Ariel walked toward the bus stop, her mother's words echoing in her mind. And what about his admission? That kiss at the airport had been his first. As she boarded the bus, Ariel made a decision. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. Meet me at the waterfront tomorrow. His reply came instantly. I'll be there. Back at her apartment, Ariel tried to distract herself with cleaning, with baking, with anything that would keep her mind off the decisions that lay ahead. the way he looked at her, like she was something precious. Was she ready to trust again? To open her heart to someone new, knowing the risk of pain it entailed? Her phone buzzed with another text, this one from Tasha. "No pressure, but we're here when you're ready to talk. Love you, cuz." The simple message brought tears to Ariel's eyes. Despite everything, despite the misunderstandings and the secrets, Tasha was still family. As Ariel got ready for bed, she felt a strange sense of peace settling over her. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations, important decisions. Meanwhile, across town in his penthouse, Caleb was on the phone with his father. "I told her everything," he was saying, "about who I am, about the bakery investment, about the airport." "And?" Caleb sighed. "To talk about what?" "Stop," Caleb interrupted, his voice firm. "You don't know her. You've never even met her." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "She's more than just a baker," Caleb said defensively. "I'm sure she is," his father replied, his tone softening slightly. "Tell you what," Caleb was stunned by the offer. "I want to meet the woman who's made my son stand up to me for the first time in his life," Richard clarified. After hanging up, Caleb stood at the window of his penthouse looking out at the Seattle skyline. He only hoped that when they met tomorrow, he could find the words to convince her that it was. The next day passed with excruciating slowness for both Ariel and Caleb. Caleb, meanwhile, spent the day alternating between hope and despair. At exactly 6 o'clock, Caleb arrived at the designated meeting spot near the Ferris wheel. She looked so beautiful it made his heart ache. As he approached, Ariel turned, sensing his presence. Finally, Ariel broke the silence. Caleb nodded, not trusting himself to speak yet. "I came to Seattle to start fresh," Ariel continued. "I'm sorry," Caleb began, but Ariel held up a hand to stop him. "Let me finish." Caleb's heart sank. This was it. "But then I realized something," Ariel said, her voice softening. "The man I've been getting to know these past weeks, the shy, thoughtful man who listens when I talk, who looks at me like I'm something precious, that's the real you. That's all I've ever wanted to be with you. Just Caleb. Not the billionaire, not the tech genius, not the Westmore heir, just Caleb. I can't promise I won't still be hurt sometimes when I think about how we started. I'll spend every day proving to you that you can trust me, if you'll let me. That kiss at the airport, it was really your first, really. And I'm sorry it happened that way. A first kiss should be special, something you remember for the right reasons. I can't promise I won't have moments of doubt, of fear." Hope began to bloom in Caleb's chest. Maybe not in the conventional way, but it was real. You were real. Yes, I know it sounds hard to believe, but when he opened them, the look of wonder on his face made Ariel's heart skip a beat. Ariel took a step closer to him. "Well, maybe we could try again, a do-over. The bakery assistant with no college degree and a family nobody's ever heard of? I understand," Caleb said, his voice gentle. "The woman who's made him happier than he's ever been." Ariel looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. Ariel felt her heart racing. It was too soon, too fast. And yet, hadn't her feelings for Caleb developed with a speed and intensity that defied normal timelines? Hadn't she felt drawn to him from the very beginning, despite her reservations? "That's who I fell in love with. If you're ever ready. I'm not changing who I am for anyone, not even the Westmores. I'm still going to work at Sweet Beginnings, still going to bake, still going to be me." She didn't know what the future held. Meeting Caleb's parents, navigating the world of wealth and privilege that was his birthright, building a relationship based on honesty after such a complicated beginning, none of it would be easy. Tasha was packing her suitcase, preparing to return to Atlanta the next day. Derek sat on the edge of the bed, watching her. "But it's the right one. I love you, Ariel Thompson. I think I started falling for you the moment you kissed me at that airport, and I've been falling ever since." Caleb nodded, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. He won't get away with it. Not anymore. Good. We tell everyone the truth about his schemes, his lies. Please call me back. We need to talk. Things aren't what you think. I love you, baby. Please come home. Make sure no one else falls for his act. She deserves that, after everything. Somehow Ariel had landed on her feet, more than on her feet, and he wasn't going to let her get away with it. She had found herself a billionaire, while he was left scrambling to keep his business plans afloat. She paused, then added, "And what about Marcus? Challenge their growing love and force them both to confront the ghosts of their pasts once and for all. What do we do about him when we get back?" "I need a ticket to Seattle," he told his travel agent, "as soon as possible." "I believe you," Ariel interrupted. Marcus Jefferson didn't lose. Ever. The results that came back made his blood run cold. Caleb had said those words to her several times now, "I love you," and each time they became a little easier to believe. She hadn't said them back yet, but she could feel herself getting closer, the walls around her heart crumbling a little more each day. Tech billionaire, Seattle royalty, one of the most eligible bachelors in the country, or underdressed? Ariel asked, self-consciousness creeping into her voice. "It was special," Caleb insisted. "You're perfect." As they approached Caleb's family home, her eyes widened. Home was an understatement. The Westmore estate was a sprawling mansion set on manicured grounds that sloped down to the lake shore. "It's a bit much, I know. Just be yourself, Ariel. Though I bet it was a pain to clean. My mother wouldn't know which end of a vacuum to hold. Ariel, my parents, Richard and Elizabeth Westmore. That's who I want them to meet. Miss Thompson, we've heard a great deal about you. Thank you for inviting me to your beautiful home." But something held her back, not doubt about her feelings for Caleb, but fear of what came next. His investors were getting nervous, asking questions about his personal life, about the fiancée they'd heard so much about, but hadn't seen in weeks. 2 weeks of quiet dinners, long walks, and getting to know each other with complete honesty between them. Caleb squeezed Ariel's hand reassuringly before leading her inside. "Welcome, Ariel. Richard, perhaps we should move to the dining room. I believe dinner is ready to be served. Caleb tells us you're quite the talented baker." But what struck her most was the coldness of the place. Despite its grandeur, it didn't feel like a home. Richard Westmore was tall, silver-haired with the same strong jawline as his son, but none of Caleb's warmth or sensitivity in his eyes. Elizabeth Westmore was petite, blonde, and impeccably dressed, her smile polite, but not reaching her eyes. She was grateful for it, especially when they entered the dining room, and she was confronted with what looked like a formal state dinner rather than a family meal. "I had just gone through a difficult breakup and needed a change of scenery." As she stood in front of the mirror in her small apartment, studying her reflection critically, she couldn't quiet the nervous flutter in her stomach. For Ariel, it felt like starting over, but with a deeper foundation than before. But still nothing compared to what the Westmores were probably used to seeing. No new messages, no calls from Ariel. It had been weeks now, and the anger that had initially consumed him had given way to a creeping fear. What if she never came back? What if she had moved on? Fear of being vulnerable again, of giving someone that power over her heart. Ariel smiled slightly. Caleb's eyes widened. "You mean?" The truth was, he didn't love Ariel, had never loved her. What he loved was the idea of her, the perfect supportive wife, who would stand by his side as he built his empire, who would never question his decisions or demand too much of him. Instead of answering, Ariel took another step forward, closing the distance between them. Slowly, deliberately, she raised her hands to frame his face, just as she had done at the airport. But this time, when their lips met, there was no anger, no pain, just tenderness and the promise of something new. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb's eyes remained closed for a moment, as if he was memorizing the sensation. "Now that," she said softly, "is how a first kiss should be. Together. No more secrets, no more hiding. Just us, figuring things out one day at a time." Caleb smiled, a full, genuine smile that transformed his face. "So where do we go from here?" "Forward," Ariel said simply. As they walked along the waterfront, hand in hand, Caleb told her about his father's invitation to dinner. He wants to meet you, my mother too. Ariel felt a flutter of anxiety. The Westmores want to meet me? They want to meet the woman who's changed their son's life, Caleb corrected gently. Ariel squeezed his hand. I'll meet them. But I want you to know something, Caleb. I wouldn't want you any other way, Caleb assured her. The word hung between them, both a declaration and a question. Love is a big word, she said carefully. It is, Caleb agreed. Ariel wanted to say it back. The words were there, on the tip of her tongue. It's okay, Caleb said, reading her hesitation. You don't have to say it back. Not until you're ready. The understanding in his voice, the patience. It was so different from Marcus, who had always pushed for what he wanted, regardless of her feelings. Thank you, she whispered, leaning her head against his shoulder as they walked. As the sun set over Elliott Bay, casting the water in shades of gold and pink, Ariel felt a sense of peace settle over her. But for the first time since leaving Atlanta, she was looking forward, not back. And for now, that was enough. Across town, in a hotel room at the Fairmont, "Do you think she'll be okay?" Tasha asked, folding a sweater carefully. "With him, I mean." Derek smiled. "I think she's going to be just fine. That man looks at her like she's the sun and moon combined." Tasha nodded, satisfied. Derek's expression hardened. Tasha nodded in agreement. Meanwhile, in Atlanta, Marcus sat alone in his apartment, staring at his phone. He dialed her number again, knowing she wouldn't answer, but unable to stop himself. As expected, it went straight to voicemail. "Ariel, it's me," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. He hung up, the lies tasting bitter on his tongue. But now she was gone, and with her, the facade of respectability she had provided. Marcus picked up his laptop and typed a name into a search engine, Caleb Westmore, and according to a gossip blog post from just a few days ago, recently seen around Seattle with a beautiful, unidentified woman. Marcus slammed the laptop shut, rage building in his chest. It wasn't fair. It wasn't right. Picking up his phone again, he made a call. If Ariel thought she could just walk away from him, start a new life with some rich tech guy, she was about to learn a painful lesson. Back in Seattle, as Ariel and Caleb shared a quiet dinner at his penthouse, neither could have imagined the storm that was brewing. A storm that would test their newfound trust. But for tonight, they were simply a man and a woman learning each other, loving each other, beginning to build something real from the ashes of what had come before. For tonight, they were just Caleb and Ariel, a wrong kiss that had somehow led to the right heart. 2 weeks had passed since Ariel and Caleb's reconciliation at the waterfront. Tonight was the night she would finally meet Caleb's parents. "They're going to hate me," she murmured to herself, smoothing down the front of her simple navy blue dress, the nicest one she owned. Her phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "On my way, you're going to be amazing. They'll love you because I love you." The words made Ariel smile despite her anxiety. When Caleb arrived to pick her up, his appreciative gaze as she opened the door made her feel beautiful despite her simple outfit. "You look stunning," he said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. "I'm not overdressed?" Caleb took her hands in his. The drive to Mercer Island was quiet, Ariel watching the scenery change from city streets to the expansive bridge over Lake Washington. "Are you grew up here?" Ariel asked, trying to keep the awe out of her voice. Caleb nodded, a hint of discomfort crossing his face. "It's beautiful," Ariel said honestly. Then, attempting to lighten the mood, Caleb laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "We had help for that." As they pulled up to the front entrance, a uniformed staff member appeared to park the car. The interior of the Westmore home was exactly as intimidating as Ariel had feared. Crystal chandeliers, priceless artwork, antique furniture that probably cost more than she'd make in a decade at Sweet Beginnings. Richard and Elizabeth Westmore were waiting in what Caleb called the small drawing room, though there was nothing small about the elegant space. "Mother, father," Caleb said, his voice sounding different to Ariel's ears, more formal, less natural. "This is Ariel Thompson." Ariel extended her hand, determined to make a good impression. "It's a pleasure to meet you both. Richard Westmore's handshake was firm, assessing. "All good things, I hope," Ariel replied with a smile. "That remains to be seen," Richard said, the words polite but the undertone unmistakably cool. Elizabeth Westmore's greeting was warmer, if still reserved. "I try my best," Ariel said modestly. "It's a passion of mine." "How quaint," Elizabeth remarked, glancing at her husband. As they followed Caleb's parents through the mansion, Ariel felt Caleb's hand on the small of her back, a silent gesture of support. Multiple courses, multiple sets of silverware, staff hovering discreetly in the background. It was a world away from the casual family dinners of her childhood, where everyone served themselves and the conversation was loud and free-flowing. "So, Miss Thompson," Richard began once they were seated, "Caleb tells us you're from Atlanta originally. What brought you to Seattle?" Ariel glanced at Caleb, who nodded encouragingly. "A fresh start," she said simply. "A breakup?" Elizabeth's eyebrows rose slightly. "With my fiancé," Ariel admitted. "We were supposed to be married this spring, but things didn't work out." "I see," Richard said, exchanging a look with his wife that Ariel couldn't quite interpret. "And now, you're working at a bakery. Is that a long-term career plan for you?" The question felt like a trap, but Ariel decided honesty was the best approach. "I love baking. It's always been my passion. But yes, eventually I'd like to have my own place. A small bakery cafe, nothing fancy. Just somewhere people can enjoy good food in a warm atmosphere. My father isn't in the picture." "Admirable," Richard said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "And your family, what do they do?" "I specialized in pastry arts. My mother is a receptionist at a dental office," Ariel replied, lifting her chin slightly. "And your education?" "I see." Caleb had remained mostly silent throughout, occasionally trying to steer the conversation to lighter topics, but always being drawn back into his father's relentless questioning. In the elaborate marble bathroom, she stared at her reflection, trying to calm her racing heart. "I have a culinary certificate from a community college in Atlanta," Ariel said, feeling increasingly uncomfortable with the interrogation. Richard nodded, his expression neutral but his eyes calculating. The rest of the dinner continued in much the same vein. Questions that felt more like an interview than a get-to-know-you conversation, thinly veiled judgments, and an increasing tension that even the excellent food couldn't mitigate. By the time dessert was served, a complicated French pastry that Ariel would normally have appreciated, she felt drained and defensive. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." "Excuse me," Ariel said suddenly, placing her napkin beside her plate. "Could you point me to the restroom?" Elizabeth gave her directions and Ariel escaped, grateful for a moment alone to collect herself. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. "For Caleb." When she returned to the dining room, she found Caleb alone, his parents having stepped out momentarily. "Pass down to the wife of each Westmore heir." She glanced meaningfully at Caleb. "Perhaps one day it will be yours." "I'm so sorry," he said immediately, taking her hands. "They're being awful." And yet there was something in the way Elizabeth said it that didn't sound like approval, more like a test or a trap. "They're being parents," Ariel corrected gently. "They want what's best for you, they just don't think that's me. And given your impulsive nature recently, we wanted to be prepared." "They're wrong," Caleb said fiercely. "Values, tradition, the importance of suitable connections, the sudden interest in a woman you barely know, the talk of love after mere weeks of acquaintance." Before Ariel could respond, Richard and Elizabeth returned, Elizabeth carrying a small box. Caleb interrupted, his voice rising. "Is that what this is about? Ariel's not suitable because she doesn't come from money." To Ariel and to me, I'm not a child anymore. A baker with no family connections, no education to speak of, who ran away from her last relationship. This is who you think is worthy of the Westmore name. I get to choose who I love, who I want in my life. Ariel felt as if she'd been slapped, the sting of Richard Westmore's assessment bringing tears to her eyes. Because she works for a living? They've been judging you all night, making you feel like you don't belong here. When the truth is you're more real, more genuine, than anyone in their social circle. "Ariel," she said, her voice softer than it had been all evening, "I wanted to show you something. This belonged to Richard's mother. Please." He loved her. She believed that now. But was love enough to bridge the vast gulf between their worlds? "I'm so sorry about what my father said. He had no right." She opened the box to reveal an exquisite diamond necklace, the stones catching the light and sending rainbows dancing across the table. "I'm not from your world. I never will be. I think we both need some space right now. Please, Caleb, just call a cab." "It's beautiful," Ariel said, genuinely impressed. "It's been in the Westmore family for generations," Elizabeth explained. For a moment, she just studied Ariel, her expression unreadable. Ariel's eyes widened at the implication. Marriage? They'd only been dating for a few weeks. "And I understand his concerns. I'm not what you imagined for Caleb." "Mother," Caleb began, his voice tight, "don't you think that's a bit premature?" "Is it?" Richard asked, his gaze sharp. "You've made your feelings for Miss Thompson quite clear, Caleb. You're not. But perhaps that's not entirely a bad thing." "My impulsive nature?" Caleb repeated, anger creeping into his voice. "The bakery investment," Richard clarified. "Caleb has always been different, sensitive, thoughtful, more interested in ideas than in social status. Richard and we didn't always understand that." She picked one up, a young Caleb, maybe 12 or 13, standing awkwardly in formal attire, his smile forced. "Until you. When he looks at you, there's a light in his eyes I've never seen before, a certainty. And that's why I'm going to tell you something I've never told anyone, not even my husband. The parties, the social obligations, the expectations. He went through the motions, did what was expected of him, but there was always something missing. My mother cleaned houses, including the Westmore's summer home on Lake Chelan, to never, ever remind anyone of where I came from. If you love my son, truly love him, don't let this family change who you are, and don't let them change him either. He deserves better than that, better than what I did." Elizabeth's voice had grown bitter. "And I did it. I became exactly what they wanted. I lost myself so completely that sometimes I can't remember who I was before. We tried to mold him into what we thought he should be. That's the story we've always told. The story Richard's parents insisted on to avoid scandal. But the truth is, I was a poor girl who fell in love with a rich boy. Thank you for telling me this." And his family made sure I understood exactly what was expected of me if I wanted to be a Westmore. I hope you'll think about what I've said and perhaps give my son another chance. Call me when you get home, just so I know you're safe. What did she say to you? Are you okay? "I'm not being impulsive," Caleb said firmly. "I know exactly what I'm doing, who I want. I'm sorry it ended the way it did. Please don't let his prejudices come between us." Richard's expression hardened. "Do you? Or are you simply rebelling against everything your mother and I have tried to instill in you?" As they walked to the waiting taxi, he tried once more to change her mind. "Let me drive you home, please. Don't let them change him either." It wasn't just Richard Westmore's attitude, though that had certainly been hurtful. It was the whole evening, the opulence, the formality, the clear expectation that she would never truly belong in that world. Thinking it might be Tasha calling from a new phone, she answered. The voice was one she'd hoped never to hear again. "It's Marcus. We just talked, woman to woman. You can't just disappear, Ari, not from me." The evening had been even more difficult than she'd anticipated. Richard Westmore's barely disguised disdain, the clear message that she wasn't good enough for his son, the enormous gulf between her simple life and the Westmore's world of privilege and tradition, it was overwhelming. Suitable connections? I know about your job at the bakery. I know about your new apartment. And I know about your billionaire boyfriend, Caleb Westmore. "Caleb," Ariel said softly, placing a hand on his arm. "It's okay." "I care about him very much," she said finally. Marcus asked, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It wasn't coincidence, Ari. It seemed impossible, and yet there had been a ring of truth to her words, a pain in her eyes that couldn't be faked. but Caleb was too angry to be soothed. "No, it's not okay." "That's enough," Richard said sharply. "You're being disrespectful. At the Fairmont, the same hotel where your cousin and her boyfriend stayed. Ironic, isn't it?" "No, Father, you're being disrespectful," Caleb retorted. "There are things you need to know about your new man, things that might make you think twice about him." "And you choose her?" Richard asked, gesturing dismissively at Ariel. The room fell silent, the words hanging in the air like poison. "I think," she said quietly, standing up, "that I should go." "Ariel, no," Caleb began, but she shook her head. "Thank you for dinner, Mr. and Mrs. Westmore," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Your home is lovely." And with that, she walked out of the dining room, head high, despite the tears threatening to spill over. Caleb caught up with her in the foyer. "Ariel, wait." "He had every right," Ariel interrupted. "This is his home, his family, and he's not wrong, Caleb." "I don't care about that," Caleb insisted, taking her hands. "I love you. That's all that matters to me." Ariel looked into his earnest face, seeing the pain and conflict there. "I need some time," she said finally, "to think. Can you call me a cab? I'd like to go home." "I'll drive you," Caleb offered immediately. Ariel shook her head. Reluctantly, Caleb did as she asked. As they waited in uncomfortable silence for the taxi to arrive, Elizabeth Westmore appeared in the foyer. "Ariel," she said, her voice softer than it had been all evening. "A word, please, in private." Caleb looked suspicious, but Ariel nodded. "It's okay." Elizabeth led her to a small sitting room off the main hall, closing the door behind them. "My husband can be blunt," she said finally, "but he loves our son, as do I." "I know," Ariel replied. "No," Elizabeth admitted. Ariel looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" Elizabeth sighed, suddenly looking older, more vulnerable. She walked to a small side table where family photos were displayed. "He was never happy in our world," Elizabeth continued. She set the photo down and turned back to Ariel. Ariel wasn't sure how to respond. "I believe you do," Elizabeth said. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "I wasn't born into this world either. My father was a mechanic in Tacoma." Ariel stared at her in disbelief. "But I thought," Caleb said, "that I came from a good family, that I fit seamlessly into Richard's world." Elizabeth gave a sad smile. "Which was what?" Ariel asked, fascinated despite herself. "To erase my past, to become the perfect Westmore wife." She looked directly at Ariel now, her eyes intense. "Don't make my mistake, Ariel." Before Ariel could respond, there was a knock at the door. "The taxi's here," Caleb called. "Coming," Ariel replied, still trying to process Elizabeth's revelation. She turned back to the older woman. Elizabeth nodded, her composure restored. When Ariel emerged from the sitting room, Caleb was waiting anxiously. "I'm fine," Ariel assured him. Caleb looked skeptical, but didn't press for details. "I need some time, Caleb," Ariel said gently. "Just a little space to think." Reluctantly, he nodded. Ariel promised she would, then slipped into the taxi, watching Caleb's figure grow smaller in the rear window as they drove away. Back at her apartment, Ariel kicked off her shoes and sank onto her sofa, emotionally exhausted. And then there was Elizabeth's unexpected confession, the perfectly polished Mrs. Westmore, from humble beginnings just like Ariel's own. Ariel's phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "Are you home safe?" She replied quickly, "Yes, just got in, thank you for tonight." His response came immediately. "I'm the one who's sorry. My father was completely out of line." Ariel stared at the message, unsure how to respond. And yet Elizabeth's words kept coming back to her. "Don't let this family change who you are." Before she could decide what to say to Caleb, her phone rang with an unknown number. "Hello? Ariel?" Ariel's blood ran cold. "How did you get this number?" "It wasn't hard," Marcus replied, and she could hear the smug smile in his voice. "What do you want?" Ariel asked, her voice hard. "To talk. I'm in Seattle." Ariel nearly dropped the phone. "You're what?" "In Seattle." How do you know where they stayed? Ariel demanded, a creeping sense of dread building in her stomach. Marcus laughed, the sound sending a chill down her spine. I know a lot of things, Ari. Ariel's mind was racing. How could Marcus know all this? Had he been following her, watching her? What do you want? She repeated, trying to keep her voice steady. Like I said, to talk. Face to face. I'm not meeting you, Ariel said firmly. We have nothing to talk about. Don't you want to know how Caleb Westmore really found you? Hired someone to track you down. A private investigator. The same one I used to find you, as a matter of fact. Ariel's heart skipped a beat. Caleb had admitted to looking for her after the airport, but hearing it from Marcus made it sound so much more sinister. You're lying, she said, but without conviction. Am I? Ask him. Ask him exactly how he found you. Whatever game you're playing, I'm not interested. Just the truth. Your precious Caleb isn't as innocent as he seems. He's been manipulating you from the start. How much he knew about you before he ever walked into that bakery. Caleb had admitted to looking for her after the airport incident, but how much had he left out? How extensive had his investigation been? And was it really just about finding out who she was, or had there been more to it? Stop it, Marcus, Ariel said, anger replacing her fear. Room 1412. If you want the full story, you know where to find me. No game, Ari. How could she tell Caleb she loved him when there were still so many questions, so many doubts? Goodbye, Marcus, Ariel said, moving to hang up. She had the early shift at Sweet Beginnings, and despite everything, the thought of losing herself in the familiar routine of baking was comforting. Richard Westmore's disdain, Elizabeth's surprising confession, Marcus's disturbing phone call. She looked up as Ariel entered, her experienced eyes taking in Ariel's tired face. And through it all, the question of whether she and Caleb could ever truly bridge the gap between their worlds. I'll be at the Fairmont until Sunday, Marcus said quickly. His father basically told me I wasn't good enough for his son, in front of everyone. Should she tell him about Marcus's call? Ask him directly about the private investigator. No matter what my father says or thinks, that won't change. Or was that playing right into Marcus's hands, letting him create doubt and distrust in her new relationship? If love is enough to overcome that kind of opposition. After hanging up, Ariel sat in stunned silence, Marcus's words echoing in her mind. Her phone buzzed again with another text from Caleb. Are you okay? You didn't respond to my last message. Ariel stared at the screen, uncertainty gnawing at her. Seen a lot of love stories, both the ones that work out and the ones that don't. His mother told me something surprising, she said after a moment. Really? Maybe it's not about whether you can fit into his world, but whether the two of you can build a new world together, one that has room for both of you just as you are. Elizabeth Westmore? She looked up, expecting the first customer of the day, but instead saw Caleb, his face tense with worry. I would never have guessed. She said she came from a background like mine, poor working class, that she had to erase her past to become a Westmore, not to let the family change who I am. And let me tell you something, the ones that last aren't the ones without obstacles. They're the ones where both people decide every day that what they have together is worth fighting for. I'm fine, she finally typed back. Just tired. Can we talk tomorrow? Of course, Caleb replied. I love you, Ariel. What? How did he even know? It's about your ex-fiancé, Marcus. He came to see me this morning. What if I can never fit into Caleb's world? Harryhill set her phone down without responding, too conflicted to say the words back, even though they were closer to the surface than ever before. Said he needed to talk to me about you, that there were things I should know. Sleep eluded her that night, her mind too full of the evening's revelations, and he mentioned that he'd drop everything if you agreed to go back to Atlanta with him. Morning came too soon, grey light filtering through her curtains as Ariel dragged herself out of bed. This isn't about a lawsuit, it's about control. But Ariel, there's something else you should know, something I should have told you from the beginning. I knew about Marcus, about your mother, about your job history, everything, before I ever walked into this bakery. He can't stand that I left him, that I'm happy without him. And now that he knows about you, about your money and status, he's trying to use that against us. That you have emotional problems. That you make up stories about men betraying you when things get too serious. Caleb had known everything about her before they'd even officially met. He'd investigated her, learned her secrets, her history. Ariel took a step back, processing this new information. So Marcus was telling the truth. About that, at least, Caleb said quickly. On one hand, Caleb's actions seemed calculating, manipulative. On the other, she couldn't deny the genuine connection they'd formed, the way he looked at her, the way he made her feel. Did you know I was working here before you ever came in? But another part, the part that had been hurt before, warned her to be careful, to protect her heart. She asked, changing the subject. What did you tell him? It was an invasion of your privacy, and I have no excuse except that I was... But Ariel, please believe me when I say my feelings for you are real. If I let you fight my battles for me, I'm no better than Elizabeth, erasing myself to fit into your world. Whatever mistakes I made in the beginning, what we have now is true. I was obsessed with finding you, with knowing who you were. That if he tried to pursue any legal action, I'd make sure he regretted it. I have resources he can only dream of, and I'll use every one of them to protect you. She would confront Marcus, hear what he had to say, and end this chapter of her life once and for all. This was where it would end, one way or another. Only then could she move forward with Caleb, if that was still what she wanted. Of course not. Yes. Always one of the things I admired about you. I understand. He seemed quite upset. Take all the time you need, but please be careful with Marcus. He also told me about your ridiculous lawsuit threat. Unstable. I found out you'd taken a job here, and I wanted a reason to see you again, to be near you. What matters is that I need to deal with Marcus on my own terms, and I need some time to process everything you've told me. But I need to handle Marcus myself. This is my battle. Handsome, charming Marcus with his what could possibly be so important that you'd follow me across the country. I know you, Ariel. I know the truth of what happened with Marcus, but that's not all he said. Wiser than I would have given her credit for. Losing you. It made me realize what I had, what I threw away with my schemes and lies. I didn't know how else to get you to talk to me, but I'm being honest now, Ari. I miss you. I want another chance. Elizabeth? Martha, sensing her distress, took over most of the customer interactions, leaving Ariel to work in the back, losing herself in the familiar rhythms of measuring, mixing, baking, threatening lawsuits, telling Caleb I have emotional problems, trying to manipulate us both. My mother? What does she have to do with this? Martha was already there when she arrived, kneading dough with practiced movements. Rough night? She asked sympathetically. I fell in love with you, Ariel. The real you, not the idea of you. Ariel nodded, hanging up her coat. Dinner with Caleb's parents. He said he's going to sue you for emotional distress, for damaging his reputation in Atlanta. He had papers with him, legal documents. Ah, Martha said, understanding immediately. The dreaded meet the parents dinner, that bad, huh? Worse, Ariel admitted, washing her hands and joining Martha at the counter. Martha winced. Ouch. And Caleb? Defended me. Got angry with his father. It was uncomfortable. And now you're wondering if it's all worth it, Martha guessed, her hands never stopping their work. Ariel looked at her in surprise. How did you know? Martha laughed softly. Honey, I've been around a long time. Ariel considered this as she began preparing the morning's first batch of muffins. Martha raised her eyebrows. She warned me not to make the same mistake. Smart woman, Martha remarked. But what if who I am isn't enough? Ariel asked, voicing the fear that had been growing since the disastrous dinner. Maybe you're asking the wrong question, Martha suggested. Before Ariel could respond, the bell above the door jingled. Ariel, he said, relief washing over his features at the sight of her. Thank God, I've been trying to call you all morning. Ariel frowned, pulling her phone from her pocket. It was dead. She'd forgotten to charge it last night, too distracted by everything that had happened. "I'm sorry," she said. "My phone died. What's wrong?" Caleb glanced at Martha, then back at Ariel. "Can we talk? Privately?" Martha tactfully disappeared into the back room, leaving them alone in the front of the bakery. "What is it?" Ariel asked, concern replacing her earlier conflicted feelings. "Did something happen with your parents?" "No, it's not that," Caleb said, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as a sign of extreme stress. Ariel felt the blood drain from her face. "He showed up at my office building," Caleb explained. "What things?" Ariel asked, though she already had a sinking feeling she knew. Caleb's expression was pained. "He told me that you have a pattern, that you left another fiancé before him in a similar way." Ariel's shock gave way to anger. "And you believed him?" "No." "What else?" Ariel asked, her voice tight. Caleb hesitated. "That's ridiculous," Ariel scoffed. "He's the one who betrayed me." "I know," Caleb assured her, "but he seemed serious." Ariel stared at Caleb, the pieces suddenly falling into place. "That's what I thought too," Caleb agreed. Ariel felt her heart sink. "What is it?" Caleb took a deep breath. "When I hired someone to find you after the airport, it wasn't just a casual search. I had a full background check done. The admission hung in the air between them." "Yes," Caleb admitted. "I'm so sorry, Ariel. I should have told you sooner." Ariel felt as if the ground was shifting beneath her feet. "Is that why you invested in the bakery?" she asked, a new suspicion forming. Caleb looked away, guilt written across his face. "So you bought your way in," Ariel said, her voice flat. "Just like Marcus said." "It wasn't like that," Caleb insisted. "Or maybe it was, at first. But then I met you, really met you, and everything changed." Ariel shook her head, trying to sort through her feelings. "I need to think," she said finally. "This is a lot." "I understand," Caleb said, his face falling. Ariel wanted to believe him. Part of her did believe him. "What about Marcus?" "I told him to stay away from you," Caleb said, a hardness entering his voice that she'd never heard before. The protectiveness in his voice touched Ariel, even through her confusion and hurt. "Thank you," she said softly. "You don't have to face him alone," Caleb insisted. "Yes, I do," Ariel said firmly. Caleb looked confused. Ariel hesitated, unsure if she should share Elizabeth's confidence. "It's not important right now." Caleb nodded, though reluctance was written across his face. After Caleb left, Ariel went through the motions of her job, her mind elsewhere. By the end of her shift, Ariel had made a decision. She changed out of her work clothes and took a taxi to the Fairmont, her heart pounding as the elegant hotel came into view. In room 1412, Marcus was waiting for her, a satisfied smile spreading across his face as he opened the door. "Ariel," he said, as if they were old friends meeting for coffee. "I knew you'd come." "Let's make this quick," Ariel said, staying in the doorway rather than entering the room. "What do you want, Marcus?" "Straight to the point," Marcus remarked, stepping back to allow her entry. Reluctantly, Ariel entered the room, though she remained standing near the door ready to leave at a moment's notice. "I assume your boyfriend told you about our little chat this morning," Marcus said, pouring himself a drink from the minibar. "He told me," Ariel confirmed. Marcus shrugged, taking a sip of his drink. "It was worth a shot, but that's not why I'm really here, Ari." "Then why are you here?" Marcus set down his glass and looked at her directly, all pretense of casualness gone. "I want you back." Ariel stared at him, then laughed in disbelief. "You're joking." "I've never been more serious," Marcus insisted. "Schemes and lies that you're still using," Ariel pointed out. Marcus had the grace to look ashamed. "I was desperate." Ariel studied the man she'd once thought she would marry. Easy smile and persuasive words. There had been a time when those words, that smile, had meant everything to her. Now she felt nothing but a distant pity. "No," she said simply. "No? Just like that? Because he can give you things I can't. Not as an accessory to his life, not as someone to be molded into what he wants, but as me. Just as I am." Marcus blinked, clearly not expecting such a direct rejection. "Just like that," Ariel confirmed. "I don't love you anymore, Marcus. I'm not sure I ever really did. I loved the idea of you, the life I thought we would have. But that was a fantasy, based on lies, yours and mine. Caleb made mistakes, so did I. But the difference between him and you, Marcus, is that he was honest about those mistakes when confronted. He didn't try to justify them or turn them back on me." "Because of Westmore?" Marcus asked, anger creeping into his voice. "Because he's rich?" "No," Ariel said. "Because he sees me, really sees me." "Goodbye, Marcus. I hope you find what you're looking for. But it's not me." It was clearing after a morning of rain, patches of blue appearing between the clouds. Like a sign, she thought, then smiled at her own fanciful thinking. It never was. "And you believe that?" Marcus scoffed. "After he investigated you, followed you. Despite everything, his mistakes, her doubts, the complications of their beginning, Caleb had become the person she turned to, the one whose voice she wanted to hear, whose touch made her feel safe. In the elevator down to the lobby, she leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. It was over, really over. It was Martha. Says he's been trying to reach you for an hour. Whatever happened with Caleb, she had finally closed the door on her relationship with Marcus, on the life she'd planned in Atlanta. Girlfriends who've signed NDAs, rumors of inappropriate behavior. Did he tell you about any of that? Martha's voice was tight with worry. "Are you okay?" Ariel asked, confused. "I just left him in his room 10 minutes ago." "Where are you?" "Ariel, the Fairmont says Marcus Jefferson checked out over an hour ago. He's gone." "Wait, when I couldn't reach you, and then his hotel said he'd checked out suddenly." Caleb's voice was strained. "Are you okay? There's a coffee shop across the street called The Daily Grind, and a bookstore next to it. Page Turner, I think it's called." The building she'd entered had looked like the Fairmont, but now that she thought about it, the lobby had seemed different from the pictures she'd seen online, smaller, less ornate. Caleb asked, and she could hear him moving, keys jingling in the background. "Where have you been?" I'm not sure what street this is." "But why? And if he had checked out of the Fairmont, where was he now? There's something else you should know." "I'm coming to get you. Ask him why she left Seattle so suddenly after they broke up. She's my ex-girlfriend. We dated for about 6 months, a year ago. When I ended things, she didn't take it well. Threatened to go to the press with stories about me, about my family. My father's lawyers got involved, had her sign an NDA. She moved to San Francisco afterward." "It ended?" Ariel asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. "No. I cared about her, but it wasn't love. Not like what I feel for you." "Badly." He jumped out, his face pale with worry, and pulled her into a tight embrace. "As for inappropriate behavior, I've made mistakes, Ariel. I've dated women who were wrong for me, ended relationships poorly. Despite everything, the investigation, the secrecy, the complications of their beginning, she trusted Caleb." He glanced at it, then answered, putting it on speaker. "Father, what is it?" "But I've never done anything criminal or truly wrong. A man came to the house today asking for her, said he was an old friend from Atlanta. Caleb said some rather unflattering things about both of you. Is Miss Thompson with you? The real Marcus checked out of the Fairmont this morning, paid in cash. No one knows where he went. Your mother was quite upset after he left. I've called the police, but I thought you should know. This is getting out of hand. Marcus is clearly unstable. I think we should go to the police ourselves, report what happened at the hotel. Bought his way into your workplace. Those aren't the actions of a man who respects you, Ari. I can't believe this is happening. Marcus was always so controlled, calculating. This doesn't seem like him at all. That you have girlfriends who've signed NDAs, rumors of inappropriate behavior. Where are you? Ariel asked, signaling for Caleb to call the police. They're the actions of someone obsessed, someone unstable. Found your billionaire too, his parents, you. But since I can't have you... His voice trailed off, then returned, harder. Since I can't have you, I'm going to make sure he can't either. That bakery you love so much. And they're putting patrols at my parents' house, the bakery, and here. Did you like my little game? And why would he direct you to a different room number than he was actually in? Ariel felt a flicker of doubt but pushed it aside. Despite the danger, despite the fear, one thing had become crystal clear in her mind. She loved Caleb. Not the billionaire, not the Westmore heir, but the man, with all his flaws, all his mistakes, all his imperfections. Through it all, Ariel clung to the certainty of her feelings for Caleb, to the knowledge that whatever happened next, they would face it together. How did I not see this side of him when we were together? Once inside with the door locked behind them, Caleb turned to Ariel. But then I haven't told him every detail of my past either. We're still getting to know each other. I should have said it sooner, but I was afraid. Afraid of being hurt again, afraid of not belonging in your world. But none of that matters now. I love you, Caleb. Just left the Fairmont. I had to see Marcus to end things properly. Marcus is responsible for his own actions, his own choices, not you. I'm choosing to live my life on my terms without manipulation or lies. And when this is over, when Marcus is caught and this nightmare is behind us, I want to start building a life with you. Not in my world or your world, but a new world. One we create together. Whether that includes Caleb, that's still something I need to decide. Especially when they feel they've lost something they believed was theirs. Marcus's face hardened. So that's it? You're choosing him. I'm choosing me, Ariel corrected. She turned to leave, but Marcus grabbed her arm. She answered, putting the call on speaker. Hello? Ariel looked pointedly at his hand until he released her. What? Westmore's not as perfect as you think, Marcus said. He has a past. No, Ariel admitted. You should ask him, Marcus persisted. About Lauren Bishop, his last girlfriend before you. Ariel shook her head, refusing to be drawn in. With that, she walked out, closing the door firmly behind her. It felt like freedom. Outside the hotel, Ariel took a deep breath of the cool Seattle air, looking up at the sky. Her phone, which she'd charged at work, buzzed with a text from Caleb. Thinking of you, no pressure, just wanted you to know. The simple message brought tears to her eyes. Was that love? Not the fairy tale kind, not the perfect storybook romance, but something real and messy and human? She was still pondering this question when her phone rang. Ariel? I'm fine, Ariel assured her. Thank goodness, Martha said, relief evident in her voice. Listen, Caleb's here. He's frantic. Ariel frowned, checking her phone. There were indeed several missed calls from Caleb, not just the text she'd seen. Put him on. Ariel? I'm fine, she repeated. I was with Marcus. I needed to tell him it's over, once and for all. Oh, thank God, Caleb said, the relief in his voice palpable. Checked out. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Ariel felt a chill run down her spine. If Marcus had checked out an hour ago, then who had she been talking to in room 1412? That's impossible, she said. I was just with him, room 1412. The Fairmont doesn't have a room 1412, Caleb said, his voice growing more concerned. Ariel, where exactly are you right now? Ariel looked around, suddenly uncertain. I'm outside the hotel, she said, her voice shaking slightly. Can you see any landmarks, street signs? Ariel looked around, trying to orient herself. I know where that is, Caleb said. It's not the Fairmont, it's the Westlake Hotel. Stay there, Ariel. After hanging up, Ariel sat on a bench outside the hotel, trying to make sense of what had happened. Had Marcus deliberately directed her to the wrong hotel? Within 15 minutes, Caleb's car screeched to a halt in front of her. You're okay, he murmured against her hair. You're okay. Ariel clung to him, suddenly aware of how shaken she was. I don't understand what's happening. Let's get you somewhere safe, Caleb said, guiding her to his car. Then we can figure this out. They drove to Caleb's penthouse, neither speaking, both lost in their own thoughts. Tell me exactly what happened, he said. From the beginning. Ariel described her conversation with the man she'd thought was Marcus. His claim that he wanted her back, his warnings about Caleb, his mention of someone named Lauren Bishop. Caleb's face darkened at the name. How does he know about Lauren? So she's real? Ariel asked, remembering Marcus's or whoever it was parting shot. Caleb nodded reluctantly. Badly how? Ariel asked, not sure she wanted to know but needing to. Caleb sighed, running a hand through his hair. She wanted more than I could give her: commitment, marriage, a family. I wasn't ready. Did you love her? Caleb looked at her directly. Ariel nodded, accepting his answer. But how would Marcus know about her, and why pretend to be Marcus at a different hotel? I don't know, Caleb admitted. None of this makes sense. Could it have been Marcus at the Westlake? Ariel asked. Maybe he just changed hotels. Caleb shook his head. I don't think so. The timing doesn't work. They were both silent for a moment, trying to piece together the strange events of the day. There's something else, Ariel said finally. Something he, whoever it was, said about you. Caleb's expression grew pained. Lauren is the only ex who signed an NDA, and that was because of her threats to go to the press with false stories. I believe you, Ariel said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. Caleb's phone rang, interrupting their conversation. Richard Westmore's voice filled the room. Yes, Caleb said cautiously. Why? There's been a situation. Ariel and Caleb exchanged alarmed looks. Marcus, she whispered. Did you speak to him? Caleb asked his father. Briefly, Richard confirmed. He seemed disturbed, kept talking about how Miss Thompson belonged with him, not with you. Did he threaten you? Caleb asked, concern evident in his voice. Not exactly, Richard said, but there was something in his manner. Thank you for calling, Caleb said. We'll be careful. You and Mother do the same. After hanging up, Caleb turned to Ariel, his face grave. Ariel nodded, still trying to process the day's events. People can surprise you, Caleb said grimly. As they prepared to leave for the police station, Ariel's phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Caleb warned. It could be Marcus. But Ariel felt compelled to know, to understand what was happening. Ariel. It was Marcus's voice, but different somehow, slurred, unfocused. Marcus. Somewhere you'll never find me, Marcus replied, laughing softly. But I found you, didn't I? Ariel felt a chill run through her. What do you want, Marcus? What I've always wanted. What does that mean? Ariel demanded, fear building in her chest. Marcus, what are you planning? But the line had gone dead. Caleb, who had been on his own phone with the police, looked at her with worry. They're sending someone to take our statement, he said. Ariel nodded, trying to stay calm despite the fear threatening to overwhelm her. What did I do, Caleb? This isn't your fault, Caleb said firmly, taking her hands in his. As they waited for the police to arrive, Ariel felt a strange calm settling over her. I love you, she said suddenly, the words coming out before she could second-guess them. Caleb's face transformed, joy breaking through the worry and tension. Say it again. Ariel smiled despite everything. I love you. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I love you too, so much. The police arrived, asking questions, taking notes, promising protection. That night, as they lay together in Caleb's bed, safe behind the building's security and the police patrol outside, Ariel finally allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future with Caleb. Caleb asked, his voice soft in the darkness. A future where she could be both strong and vulnerable, independent and loved, herself and part of something larger. The wrong kiss. The right heart. What are you thinking? Somewhere in the city, Marcus was still out there, a threat looming over their newfound happiness. But for tonight, in this moment, Ariel chose to focus on the love she'd found, on the man beside her, on the future they might build together. About us, Ariel replied honestly, about how something that started so wrong could turn out so right. He survived, barely, and was admitted to a psychiatric facility for evaluation and treatment. Caleb's arms tightened around her. Exactly, Ariel murmured, snuggling closer to him. Exactly that. Outside, the Seattle rain began to fall again, a gentle patter against the windows. A future that had begun with a kiss meant for someone else, given to the man who would come to mean everything to her. Ariel continued working at Sweet Beginnings, though she had begun developing plans for her own bakery cafe, with Caleb's encouragement and Martha's blessing. Richard Westmore remained formal and sometimes distant, but there was a growing respect in the way he spoke to her, especially after she had stood her ground during a disagreement about Caleb's new business, and support as Ariel navigated the unfamiliar waters of Seattle's high society. Caleb had started a new tech venture, something smaller and more personal than West Tech had been, working with a team he genuinely liked and respected. Happier, more himself. The wrong kiss indeed. Then that's all that matters, isn't it? But somehow, against all odds, exactly the right heart. All that time we were together and I never saw it. Not in my world or your world, but a new world, one we create together. The Ferris wheel was lit up against the darkening sky, reflecting in the waters of Elliott Bay. Not because it's expected, not because it's the next logical step, but because I love you, all of you, exactly as you are. Instead, it was a simple band of rose gold, with a small but perfect diamond flanked by tiny sapphires, the exact color of Caleb's eyes. And I want to spend the rest of my life loving you, supporting you, building that new world with you. 3 days later, the police found Marcus in a motel outside the city, unconscious from an overdose of sleeping pills and alcohol. And I love you. Yes, Caleb Westmore, yes, I will marry you. It reminded me of you, unique, elegant, strong, and promise of their future together. Ariel thought back to that day at the Atlanta airport, the day she had mistaken a stranger for her cousin's boyfriend, the day she had kissed Caleb Westmore for the first time, never imagining where that impulsive act would lead. And if you don't like it, the loss of Ariel, combined with the failure of his business plans, had triggered a breakdown. With the man she was meant to love, building the life they were meant to share. The investigation revealed a disturbing picture. Marcus had been struggling with mental health issues for years, carefully hidden beneath his charming exterior. I never knew, Ariel told Caleb as they sat in Martha's office at Sweet Beginnings, discussing the news. Caleb asked, his voice soft as they stood at the railing, looking out at the water. The important thing is that he's getting help now, and that everyone is safe. People like Marcus become expert at hiding their true selves, sometimes even from themselves. I meant it then, and I mean it even more now. These past 6 months with you have been the happiest of my life. You've shown me what it means to be real, to be authentic, to love without conditions or expectations. He didn't want you to see, Martha said wisely. Caleb squeezed Ariel's hand. In the weeks that followed, life gradually returned to normal. And, most surprisingly, Ariel had begun building a tentative relationship with Caleb's parents. Elizabeth Westmore had become an unexpected ally, sharing stories of her own early days as a Westmore wife, offering advice. He's different with you, Elizabeth told Ariel during a rare moment alone, as they waited for Caleb and Richard to join them for dinner. He makes me happy too, Ariel replied simply. Elizabeth smiled, touching Ariel's hand briefly. On a rainy evening, 6 months after their first meeting at Sweet Beginnings, Caleb took Ariel back to the waterfront, where they'd reconciled after the disastrous dinner with his parents. Do you remember what you said to me here? That I loved you, Ariel replied, smiling at the memory. And I said I wanted to build a life with you, Caleb continued. He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. Ariel felt tears forming in her eyes as Caleb dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. Ariel Thompson, he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. Will you marry me? The ring he held out was not what she had expected, not the massive diamond that would have been typical of a Westmore engagement. It's beautiful, she breathed. I designed it myself, Caleb said. I love it, Ariel interrupted. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, as he rose to kiss her with all the love, the wrong kiss, but somehow, miraculously, the right heart. And as the Seattle rain began to fall around them, soft and cleansing, Ariel knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Together. The end.